TikTok, it's time to rock. My name is Andrew. I'm all the way from New Zealand. Guys, on the top rung with me, we have Hoss from Melbourne. Behind him, underneath him, holding him up, we have Brad, the backdoor man. And all the way from New York, my New York Jets fan. There he is there with his Funky Eddie, EVH. Mikey, good to see you, brother.
Thanks, Andrew. Cheers, boys. Good to be here.
Good
Great,
to see you. Good to see you.
Thank
Awesome.
Hey, it's always a good time to catch up with the 5150s, and especially when we've got a couple of guests coming on, and we've got a cool subject we think, guys, to talk about. And Mikey, you're going to offer a couple of thoughts and opinions and experiences, because that's what our show's about. But I've got to tell you though, bro, I've got to warn you that we've got form in breaking guys into other shows. So don't be surprised, bro, if you get offers to go on other Van Halen shows. Never forget where you came from, bro. Never forget the 5150s. All right, you promise?
Absolutely.
Hoss, what have you been up to, brother?
Hey, fellas, and everyone in the chat, of course. I've been working in the studio mostly this last week. I've had a couple of guitar sessions, which have been fun. One was kind of like, for a client, was like an old school Lenny Kravitz funky rock sort of thing.
Wow.
One was more like a straight ahead 80s pop rock kind of thing. And just some stuff like that. One was a crazy fusion thing with like too many notes. And so it's been a real bit of a mixed bag, actually, of stuff in the studio. And later this afternoon, I'm heading down to the coast, about a 2-hour drive from Melbourne, because the weather is nice, and we have an outdoor gig with Daryl Braithwaite. So it's going to be fun.
Lucky. Aren't you lucky? Isn't he lucky, Brad?
Nice.
It's a terrible day it's going to be. And of course, I get to start the day by talking to you, gents, and, it's a perfect Saturday, really.
Awesome. Yep. Yes, I'm jealous. I'm going to be doing a nice outdoor gig. I love outdoor gigs. They're the best, man. Especially on a day like today. Wow.
Yeah. Days like today is perfect. It's 29 Celsius down here in Melbourne town, and the sun is shining, and it's a beautiful day for an outdoor gig down by the beach.
Yeah.
Awesome. What about you, Brad? What have you been up to, brother?
Myself, I've been fairly busy. Obviously, working. It never ends, I've got a full-time job, so that's the bread and butter. That's what pays. But getting back into gigging a lot. So got another one tonight, commercial hotel in South Morang for all you Melbourne people. John ZD351, if you're welcome to come down, say g'day, mate, if you're there. If you're not, catch you soon. Anyone else that wants to come down, it's with Rewind 80s, so it's all bit of Van Halen in there. Bit of Van Halen in there, bit of everything. So I'll do my best. I'll do my best to do Ed proud tonight. So we'll see. But awesome. And I get well to my mother, Ellen Vorachin. So
Ellen,
speedy recovery.
Okay, yeah. Get well, Ellen. We didn't know you were under the weather, so you're a great support to the show, and we appreciate everything you do. So we send prayers and good wishes to you.
Absolutely, sending love, Ellen.
Yeah. Exactly.
Hoss, before Mikey kicks off the introduction for the show and the subject that we're going to talk about, do you want to do the shout out at the start of the show? Is that okay?
Absolutely, we can do one at the start, and obviously, as people will have crept in during the show, I'll do one at the end as well, if you like, and we'll have a bunch of different people, but. We got Brad's mum, Ellen, who we were just mentioning. So our thoughts and hugs are with you. John ZD351, the illustrious, the one and only. We've got Dan of New Jersey, Tim Thomas, Chris Hunter, Keith Campbell. How you doing, Keith? Charmaine all the way in UK at 3 a.m. So props for anybody in the UK at 3 a.m. checking in. You're absolutely crazy, and we love you. And, of course, the one and only Gretch Zeppelin is in the house. We've got Hobo Roadie. Robert Ranford's just joined. Hey, Robert, how you doing? Thanks for joining in. And I'll do another shout out at the end. We'll have a bunch of different people.
Awesome. Sounds
Well-
good, bro. We always appreciate everyone jumping in, and we'll do the best that we can to do some shout outs. If you guys have any questions, obviously in relationship to the subject we're talking about, please fire them through. We'll do the best that we can to answer them. We don't pretend to be anything other than just fans, guys, but that's what we're here for. We're here to provide an opportunity for people to get together and just share the experience, Brad. That's what we do, isn't it?
100%. 100%. We're all in this together, guys. We're all fans. We love it. So can't wait for you guys to. I'm looking forward to this one because I won't take the seat yet, but I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Mikey, you're the guest, so we're giving you the hard job. You're going to do the introduction for the show, Mike. So yeah. The seat is yours, brother.
Thank you so much. And first and foremost, what you guys do, celebrating that spirit, the passion every week, it's awesome. It's awesome for us fans. We always say it's such a nice, big community globally. And I've met so many fantastic people on social media through you guys. You guys have started this and carrying the torch since Ed's passing and before. So it's an honor to be here. I'm a grateful guest. And the topic this week, Unleashed, 1986 MTV special, and quite an exciting time in my life. Probably like Brad and Simon and yourself, Andrew. Music was very important to me growing up. I started playing guitar around 10 years old. And, without giving my age up, that was 1984, right when that album came out. So I was in sixth grade. And I had really discovered Ed and was really getting into Van Halen. Not that I could play it, but just what he was doing on a guitar in the 80s when I was just about a teenager, 12, 13, was revolutionary. Still revolutionary today, 40, 50 years later. But I had an older cousin who got me into rock music. And we lived in Brooklyn, New York, in what they used to call an Italian mother-daughter house, where my family lived upstairs and my dad's sister, my aunt, lived downstairs. Wow. So I had an older cousin, Joe, who was about 4 or 5 years older than me and was always listening to the coolest music. He got me turned on to Zeppelin, Purple, The Who, Hendrix, Beatles, and of course Van Halen. So being as it was, I was 12 years old when 86 rolled around and 5150 rolled around. And it was an interesting time because I was kind of bummed out that Dave left the group, like probably most of us at that time, if you can remember. And there was all these rumors about who was going to be in the band, Patty Smythe, Sandy Hagar, and a whole bunch of other folks. And I was just bummed out because I love Dave and I love that era. And my cousin said to me, he's like, they have a new album coming out. They got Sammy Hagar in the group. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, and I'm going to get you tickets and that's going to be your first concert. And that was my first show. So the Live Without a Net tour, I saw in Brendan Byrne Arena in New Jersey. I think it was like August of 86. And my first concert ever. Talk about like setting the bar as high as it could be. And I'll never forget Bachman Turner Overdrive Open, BTO, and special Leslie West. So one of Ed's heroes. The first album, he had the Les Paul Jr. was going to be on the cover, but then at the last minute, the Stripe was on the cover. And during Mississippi Queen, Bachman Turner Overdrive brought out Leslie to do a couple songs with Mississippi Queen they went into, and Ed came out and jammed with them in the opening act. And this was all my first concert. And I was just like, 12 years old, it's going bananas. And right after that concert was around the time this Unleashed documentary was released. So I also had just gotten cable. Cable TV wasn't available. I know you guys live down in Australia, and you didn't get a lot of the goodies. You didn't get a lot of the concerts. They rarely even went down to tour until later. So, I didn't have cable TV. A lot of us didn't growing up. And right in 86 is when MTV came into my neighborhood, living in Brooklyn. And I had just gotten MTV when this documentary was coming out. So it was like everything was lining up for me, I was like, wow, this is fantastic. And I remember watching it and getting such an insight, like almost like they pulled the veil on the band, right? You never really knew the insides of the inside because, there's no social media, there's no internet, there's no cell phones. Yeah. The only way you got your information back then was through magazines, through opening the album cover, looking at the pictures, right? There was rarely any videos. You had 3 videos from 1984. You had Oakland 81. That was really all I ever saw, maybe 4 or 5 videos of the band. And not a lot of interviews, right? Not, some press, but not a lot of stuff on TV to really like rewind or watch over and over to get like their insights. So this was like the first like opening the onion, peeling a layer off and getting to see the band vulnerable, right? Talking about bummed out. Like 1984,
Yes.
biggest grossing tour of the band, #2 album, the best sold out stadium, probably the best tour they had up to that date. And Dave leaves, right? Wants to be a movie star. He does a solo album. Gets Steve Vai, gets this great band together, like a mock Van Halen band. All these great players: Billy Sheehan on bass, Steve Vai on guitar, Greg Matt Bisonet on drums, and he leaves. And they're like in a lurch. Like, what are we going to do? So I love in the documentary, like when Al talks about, like, me and Ed were talking about what's the direction of the band, what's our next move. We speak to Brian May and Clapton and Towns, and everyone reaches out to them. They want to do songs like an all-star album with different players and different singers. And, I love it in the documentary when Ed and Alex, like, they're kind of vulnerable. They go, we're Van Halen. We're going to go on as Van Halen. We'll get a singer and we're going to power through. And look what they did. They came out with 5150, which 84 was an amazing album. And 5150 just like knocked the charts off, like just went through the roof to another level. So seeing that unfold on a documentary was, I was 12, was wild. It was totally wild.
Yep. Would have been. Yeah. It would have been. Yeah, we didn't. I don't know, Brad, if we got that particular MTV documentary down here at all on MTV, but I didn't see it at the time. But it would have been obviously the same time that I had the Live Without a Net video, VHS. But I never saw the MTV documentary. So, and someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but do I understand that part of the reason that the Live Without a Net even came to be is because they were filming for MTV and then they decided to put together a live video out of it? Is that right, or is that wrong?
I'm not sure about that, Hoss, to be honest with you, but I do know that they did screen Unleashed in 86 around the time they did, and MTV did another deep dive when the Carnal Knowledge record came out, and I think part of that they showed the behind the scenes thing of the tour where it describes his Music Man guitar and things like that. Then after that, they did play this Unleashed after that. I remember that's the first time I ever saw it, back about in the early 90s anyway. So I'm not sure to answer your question, Hoss. I don't know, maybe someone in the chat or maybe Mikey knows. I'm not sure. Andrew, do you know?
I remember them doing a lot of promos about that tour when the album came out. Like, I specifically remember Howard Stern getting a copy of Why Can't This Be Love, the first single, and playing it on the radio. And then, I'm from New York originally. I live in New Jersey now, but my family's still from New York. Howard Stern was like the biggest thing, like Van Halen in the 80s as well, for talk radio, right? Self-proclaimed king of all media. So he gets a copy of So This Is Love. I remember they were kind of promoing the crap out of the album with Sammy and the band. And I remember him playing it on the radio, listening to it first time with Robin Quivers, right? And he's listening to it and he's like, yeah, it's good. It's not Dave. It's not Van Halen. It sounds like a good pop record. Like, and he was kind of down on it. And I was like, no. But right after that, there was a media blitz on MTV and stuff about the tour, about Sammy, and about the album.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was a little bit interesting here for us here in New Zealand because we never got that either when it came out in 86, 87. I never saw that until 92, 93 on a VHS copy, Mikey and Brad and Hoss. So I was blown away by it. We all got Live Without a Net when that came out. That was an official, obviously record sanctioned drop. We got that. But I like in particular what Mikey said in his introduction, guys, about the honesty, the sincerity that the Van Halens were giving in this documentary from their perspective. And it turned out to be 99% of what they said in this documentary was true. It turned out to be an honest account of the band and this new stage. And for me, watching that again recently, the sincerity and the integrity of the band and wanting to give the truth to their fans was something I think not too typical that bands were doing around this time. Hoss and Brad, they were held behind this A&R and this marketing machine, and they didn't want to come across as vulnerable. I'm not saying that was a negative thing, but it's certainly, from my perspective, a positive thing. Hoss and Brad, you guys got an opinion on that, or am I just making a big deal out of nothing?
No, I think I think you're right. I mean, I should probably say too, because I think you guys know, but for the people in the chat, they might assume that I've seen this before now, but actually I hadn't seen it until during the week when I was obviously watching it, getting ready for this discussion, and it was really, yeah, it was awesome actually, because I got to watch something that's so old and so a part of all of our DNA, but with completely fresh eyes, and so I thought this would be interesting how I now perceive, because by now we've read a lot of the books that have been written on it. So I thought it'd be interesting to see what they're actually saying to the cameras, and if that differs at all from what's been documented in biographies and books and stuff. Because obviously since then, Sammy's come out with a book, David Lee Roth's come out with a book, everybody's come out with their own account of what happened. But this was like right in the eye of the storm, so to speak. This was just when it happened, like literally like within that 2-year period.
Right.
And I found it really, really interesting. And I think it is, Andrew, pretty true to all the stuff that we've since heard in interviews and read in books. There's a couple of things that I thought were interesting. I thought it was, look, obviously the pain of Roth, as you said, Mikey, wanting to go off and be a movie star was still pretty fresh for all the boys. So you can, it's understandable that a lot of their comments would have had barbs in them. Like Alex said, it was like having a pain in your tooth for 11 years and then finally going off to the dentist
Gold
and
crown.
getting a gold
Yeah,
crown.
gold crown. Yeah, that's a gold nugget.
And I thought, look, I thought that was sort of funny, obviously, because it was a funny metaphor. But I also thought it was really telling that how fresh that pain was for them, because that's a pretty harsh way to talk about your original singer of 11 years, as a pain in the tooth. But you can see that, I mean, the boys were hurting, but also you could see that they were in this honeymoon period, weren't they? You could see the way that they were interacting both on stage, but also just sitting around being interviewed or backstage in the band room and stuff. And
Right.
it was fascinating to me. And Keith is saying there in the chat, he's so surprised that I'd never seen this before. And I should say, like, to everyone that what Andrew said at the top of the show is completely true, that I'm a fan of Van Halen, but I'm not I'm not an expert on all the bits and pieces. I mean, I grew up just as a musician and a guitarist, loving the music. And really, so all I did was absorb those first 7 or 8 albums. I never really read all the magazines, and I didn't watch all the documentaries. I burned out like 3 copies of Live Without a Net, but I considered that like almost like listening to an album.
Right.
So yeah, so Keith, it's true. It's there's a lot of stuff I actually don't. I have to say I don't consider myself an expert on Van Halen in any way. I just happy to be part of the discussion here, and so seeing it with fresh eyes was actually great. It was like finding an unopened present in the attic that from like 1986 that you forgot to open, and so you blow the dust off and open it, and see what it is. So in a way, it's a gift. So I like it.
Like time machine.
Time Machine is perfect, and because I remember when that album was dropped. I was around. I was queuing up to buy that album, and it's fascinating that you should say that, Hoss, because I didn't realize that you've only seen it this week. So I can imagine the excitement that you must be feeling, because I only discovered it again, on YouTube maybe 5 years ago, when you're searching, and I watched it again and thought, wow, this is fantastic. Right. The way that they're just speaking with this honesty and this integrity is fantastic. One little thing I noticed too, guys, when I watched it, I don't know if you guys picked up on it, but Alex still has that Dutch accent on some of the words. I don't know if you guys picked up on it, but Eddie certainly has an American accent, but Alex definitely on some of the words, you can detect that Dutch accent there. So clearly they were speaking Dutch at home. And in fact, we've discussed that, haven't we? Because they did this, they showed this film clip not long ago where they're speaking Dutch on Dutch TV. They're having a conversation. So, yeah, fascinating.
Yeah.
It's
it's a when I watched this again this week, guys, I found it was a really honest, vulnerable state that they were in at that particular time as Van Halen. Obviously, they were expressing, what they were going to do moving forward, and they're hurt. That pretty much you could see the hurt in them. David Lee Roth had left them, and there was, like you said, there was a few barbs in some of the comments. But the one thing I want to mention is once they elaborated on Sammy joining, and then the footage of Sammy, even just them getting out of like the airplane and stuff like that, how happy they seemed as a band, and they were like a band of brothers. Like that was what they were longing for a long time. So,
Right.
For David Lee Roth fans, obviously not the greatest news in the world that David Lee Roth left, but I think it instilled a bit of, let's just say, trust and honesty in the band when they moved forward in the direction they were going, regardless of who the singer was. Because the band were being honest, saying, look, if you like it, great. If you don't, we're still going to do what we do. Because as soon as and Ed even talks about it in one point, whether he's playing keyboards or guitar, the minute that Mikey and Alex come in, they sound like Van Halen, even when he's not playing guitar. So that was just, I found those little comments were wonderful little statements for me, and time-stamped. You can still see as the band progressed after that, how up until obviously the problems they had around the Balance era and things like that. But it was just a second evolution of the band for me, and I'm a massive fan of both eras, or all eras of Van Halen. So that's all. That's all. The few major things I picked up out of watching this again this week were those: the honesty, the sincerity, and the effect that it had on them, and obviously, out of something bad, something good happens. The comment you mentioned about, gold cap tooth. So in other words, they were happy with the changes and it freed Ed to become a songwriter as he wanted to be and things like that. So
that's great, Andrew. I was going to touch on that great point, and Simon has spoken about this on prior podcasts, how Ed became a different guitar player, right? It wasn't all about the solos and blazing virtuosity, which he still did, but now he had a singer who could sing these high octaves and ranges. And now he could fully be like an arranger and a songwriter. And look at like the ballads and some of the songs, some of the greatest songs Ed ever wrote that he probably had held away because maybe Dave couldn't sing them or hit those notes. And now this became a different band, right? It's still all the great flashy guitar playing with. Now, I'm not saying Van Halen ever didn't have great songs. Surely it did. I'm a guitar player. I love it. But now a wider audience got to hear a more pop kind of side of Van Halen with great writing and great arranging. You really saw the full gamut of what Ed could do, right? It's like he was unleashed from a cage.
Yeah. And let me interrupt you 1 second, Mikey, and Keith has made a good point in the chat too, is there's a part of me that, like, with the early stuff, before all the keyboards, right, before the 5150 record with Sammy, it's distorted, Marshall on 10 guitar all the way through the song with a solo in the middle. I got to say, there's something almost more exciting to me when you got a song that's like a pop song with keyboards, say Dreams, right?
Right. And
then you get to that sort of breakdown just before the solo, and then all of a sudden you hear Ed's guitar. That's like a Jack in the Box coming out all of a sudden, and in a way, that new era of Van Halen at the time, and as you were rightly saying, they've got a singer that can hit all these amazing melodic notes that clearly could almost jam the lyrics and the melodies to the song on the first run through in the studio, which obviously they were not getting with Roth because he was probably more of a guy that would write out the lyrics on the plane, and it was more considered perhaps, and took a bit more time. You can see the love affair in their eyes, can't you? It's like these guys are just totally jonesing on each other, and it's beautiful to see. It's very exciting to see, actually, So, yeah, you're right. So, sorry, I just wanted to interrupt and say that as you were talking, Mikey, it reminded me of there's something like, obviously, you listen to a song on Van Halen 1, and then when it gets to the solo, you're excited, like, say, Ice Cream Man or something, but you're hearing distorted guitar that whole 2 minutes up to the solo. But when you hear a song like Dreams or you hear a song like Jump, and then all of a sudden that door opens. It's like Beat It
Right.
too. The door opens and Ed comes popping out. It's almost like, I mean, there's a lot of metaphors I could use,
Right.
and especially, even romantic metaphors where like the longer the payoff is, the more exciting the end result is, So anyway, I'll say no more on that.
Right. It's like they went from a raw rock party band to a polished, like, virtuoso band, right? It was two different bands, in essence, the same band, but totally two different approaches and feels and sounds, right? And obviously technology and recording and engineering came a long way in the early 90s, but just the sounds of those albums and the productions, I mean, we always kind of bitch on U812 and you can't hear the bass and this and that, we want to remix it, but aside from stuff like that, just the sound of 5150, when you got that album, you go like, whoa, wow. It just, the production blew away.
I've got a question I want to check out to you guys in relation to Unleashed and also some of the albums that Van Halen did after David Lee Roth. And I just want to make a bit of a caveat there for people who are watching the show and people who might be watching the live stream later. We're not criticizing David Lee Roth at all. I know that some David Lee Roth fans out there, when they hear Sammy fans talk about Sammy, they think that that's an attack on Dave. We don't do that on this show. We're talking about the subject and specifically the Unleashed. So there is always going to be a comparison between Sammy and David Lee Roth. So we're going to speak objectively and historically, but also emotionally, because we have an attachment to it. But it's not. There's no dichotomies or divisions between the singers for this show and for the co-hosts. We've made that clear many times that we see Van Halen as a progression, and we love all eras. So I just want to make that quite clear. But Mikey, Hoss, and Brad, I want to ask you guys this question. We saw Eddie playing the keyboards on Unleashed, and then Eddie goes and he has this wet, dry, wet sound later, and he's got a lot of delay going on there, and he's getting a bit of reverb coming through, and chorus and all. So, and I thought, is that because he's been playing the keyboard, so he's trying to replicate maybe a keyboardish kind of sound directly back through his guitar? Is that something you think that he was deliberately trying to do, guys?
Possibly.
I don't think it was deliberate, but I think it's a very, very good point that subconsciously, but he's hearing that more expansive space now that the keyboards always occupy, because the first thing that anyone does, of course, when you're recording vintage synths in a studio is you're going to put a beautiful, big, lush reverb on it, Okay. And so you're right. So given that he's now, there's probably all of them, Alex as well, and Mikey and Sammy, they're in the studio hearing these big wide keyboards. Now you've got to really do the same thing with the guitar, or by comparison, the guitar's going to sound small, And I think that's a really interesting point. I haven't heard that before, Andrew, but I think you're spot on.
Thank you, brother. Hey, Holly, good to see Holly Lewis, a good friend of the channel, in the chat, saying hi. We'd like,
look at this.
Always...
Hey, Holly.
Who's this little guy? Who's this little guy?
Yeah, I got my little guy, and I left him at work. My little guy
got him this week,
a couple of days ago. Yeah. I got him this week, but I left him at work. He's keeping my work desk company. You'd be surprised actually how many people came into work and go, "Oh, you're a Van Halen fan." There's
Yeah, Slash. I've got to get my Eddie one to go with Slash.
Yeah, you do. And then you can put each of them on top of your amps. Look at that little guy.
Oh my gosh, that's a little guy, all right.
You know the history. Gene got the demo. Started it all, right?
Yeah.
Look at that. Oh my gosh.
Indeed. And on your point before, Andrew, about this is not a David Lee Roth bashing show. Of course, for anyone new to the show, they'll know that. Sorry, anyone that watches the show will know it's not about that at all. Anyone new to the show, it's very important that this. None of us could choose. If we had to choose one era, that would be like saying, which do you prefer, your left or your right testicle? It's impossible.
Right.
You know, it's you've got David and you got Sammy, and the music became so different based on what they. So,
I agree. Vanilla or chocolate. I love them both. I love Dave. I mean, people rag on Dave's vocals, but Simon, you know, I listen to Beautiful Girls, and the vocal, you know, the whole, I don't know what the word meter or vocal line for Beautiful Girls, that scat, big bat, you know, old big band jazzy influence that Dave had. I mean,
Yeah,
that is, for me, bar none, my favorite Dave. I love Dave. I love Sammy, and I love Gary. I love every era.
Mikey, you're a man after my own heart, brother, because it's that jazzy Dave that is irreplaceable in my heart. Like, you're talking about, like, Beautiful Girls is a great example because you got that real swing. So This Is Love, another. Can you imagine Sammy singing So This Is Love? It would not sound right at all, you know, just in the way you couldn't imagine Roth singing Dreams. So to me, we actually, by the fact that David left, we got as Van Halen fans, we got a gift, because then we saw a different side of Ed's writing that we probably would never have seen.
Right.
And so in a way, the universe, you know, people say, oh, which one do you prefer? That's a moot point to me, because it's really about both of them equally. And it's, you know, it's a bit like the metaphor I said before. It's like crazy. You could never choose. So
no, it's like, do you love Zeppelin or Floyd? I love them both. Like, I love Van Halen, every era, every song, every singer. And Andrew made a great point too. You're going to go around and ask all the, you know, we're all guitar players. I never thought about the sound when Ed's sound changed with new albums with the keyboards, but you're right. It needed to complement that new sound.
Also, yeah. And also, as we all know now, that it seemed like Roth was really like a big part of keeping that door closed on Eddie playing keyboards. And then when that door swung wide open, we got all these songs that had been sitting around that awesome songs, you know?
Dude, the band hated Jump. They hated it when Ed played it for them. Ed and Don Landy did that demo. The song is the demo, basically. And they played it, you know, first they got into 5150 Studios for 1984. Ed and Don Landy made this beautiful demo of Jump. The band hated it. Dave hated it. He's like, why are you playing keys? You're the best guitar player in the world. He's like, because it's fantastic. That's why I'm doing it. You know, the best, biggest song.
Yeah, I mean, to me, you look at the US Festival in, you know, 82 or whenever that was, and you see that era of the band, and then you see Live Without a Net, and then you see that era of the band. Why would you ever want to choose sides? There's no sides. It's the yin and the yang of everything we know as Van Halen and have come to love. And as a 13-year-old boy who was watching both of those, they turned me on for completely different reasons. I mean, the flamboyance of the US Festival and the complete almost debauchery of it was something that was a massive turn on, because to me it was the essence of rock and roll, was that nonchalant kind of, you know, we don't care, we're just going to go out and rock you guys. Live Without a Net was musically way more polished, but it still had that childlike playfulness, you know. Look at those. I
love them both. I love this and I love this.
There you go.
Every sound.
Yeah.
You can't have this without this. Correct. I love them both. I don't pick. I don't choose. I love every era of every song.
And you know, there's no better meaning for the lyrics of Best of Both Worlds than exactly what we're talking about. So they even subconsciously probably wrote about it. So there you go. You know,
absolutely.
Yeah. What did you guys think of the routine that they were doing? Now, we all know that musicians, like actors or guys together, and when there's a camera, can ham it up when the camera's there. But I got the impression that when they were preparing behind in the dressing rooms, getting together with their practice amps and mucking around, that certainly came across to me as something authentic. You know, that they were. In fact, they mentioned that, didn't they? That was a really important ritual. It was a really important component of what they were going to do as a band, that they were going to get together and spend that time. What did you guys think about that? Was that authenticity there that you guys seen? Was that something that reflected into you?
Absolutely.
Kick it off.
You go, Mikey. You go first.
I mean,
you go, Mikey.
one thing in my head I want to bring up about that, Andrew, and the band, Simon touched on it. They were giddy. They were so happy. They were like, it was like Sammy's in the band. There's no big egos at that time, right? They were all equals, as Ed said in the documentary. And something that sticks in my mind, I don't remember if it was in Unleashed or not, but when they're backstage waiting to go on and the Robert Palmer song comes on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then last.
How cool is that?
Ned's playing it on the guitar and they're all lined up backstage and they're doing a dance. Like, that's sincere. That's real. Like, that's not hamming it up for the cameras. That's just four guys loving the new situation, loving the new music, and just it's coming across on the media, on the TV. And as a fan, I was like just as giddy as they were because I was excited.
And do you know how big that song was? That song was a huge song, guys.
Huge.
That was huge. It was everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. That was really, really fun to see. I agree with you 100%, Mikey. That was not a put on for the cameras. You can tell that at some point they had ended up jamming that song at a sound check or something backstage because they all instantly just went into it, and they were doing their
dance moves.
Yeah, I'm sure they got a name for the dance and all of that. But yeah, that was cool. That was really cool to see.
Yeah, there's a sincerity behind what they were showing when Sammy joined the band, which is, that Band of Brothers thing. I mean, I've only ever been in a situation similar to that once in a band myself for about, 10, 12 years, and hopefully it will happen again. But you pretty much, we used to have like a Braveheart speech before we go out, the whole bit, yeah. And in other bands I've been in, there's nothing like that. It's just like, you just walk out and play. So you can really see that, the sincerity behind what they were doing. They were brothers. They loved each other. And the minute, like Sammy says, the minute they walked out on stage, the adrenaline would pump just that second before they go out on stage. When someone yell out, showtime, and they'd all just be pumped up and ready to go. So that was probably integral for them, a really important thing for them to be together before the show, like for those few minutes or however long it was in the dressing room preparing. Yeah. Because it probably rev them up more than get rid of the nerves and go out there and do their job, to the best of their ability.
Did you guys also notice too? There was a cool couple of comments by Sammy. And they can't seem to escape Eric Clapton, can they? So they make a reference that they were just jamming to Cream, and they named the song "Politician." They were during the sound check, and I'm going, oh my gosh, So so even though they're probably the number one act in the world, number two, number three, certainly in the top 3 or 4 acts in the world, they're still jamming to stuff that they were playing, Mikey, when they were kids, you know?
They did the Montrose song on one of the shows in 5150, right? They did was it Rock Candy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were obviously still connected heavily to their roots, which that's fantastic, I love
they did
that.
Rock and Roll, right? Does Live Without a Net have Rock and Roll by Led Zeppelin? I forget.
It's not on the official. It's not on
Right.
the official release, but it's on some of the bootlegs. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that from the concert, from going to it, which is wild for me because I was a huge Zeppelin fan, and to see Van Halen do Led Zeppelin, I was like, whoa, and it was great.
Yeah. I thought the dressing room scene, I think that was fascinating. You're right, Brad. I think it's better to get a band together, even if it's just a jam session and you're going up onto the blues open stage at the blues club, and there's 15 people watching you. It's always good to have a couple of your mates together and say, yeah, we're going to get out there, we're going to do the best we can. All right, are we here? I prefer to be in that situation than like shoegazers and just walk on, or like golf
team, footballers, rugby. Right before the whistle blows, they get together and they do the 1, 2, 3, go team.
Yeah,
what it is, you're a band of brothers.
The Braveheart thing, we're all like, hey, off you go.
Yeah. Look, I agree with you. I played rugby too for a long, long time. You're right, and some of the things that we used to say in the dressing room before a game, my gosh. Right. But yeah, important part of the ritual. But I think that was revealing. It was an interesting observation. And also, guys, I think too that the clips that they had too. Did you notice? Obviously, it was an old tape, but there's no editing. Absolutely no. Hoss and Brad, you guys know production better than I do. That's just filmed and put on tape, isn't it?
100%. It's a live performance filmed. There's nothing.
Yep.
Yeah, and I was going to talk about the live performances in the special as well. I mean, to hear them break into Summer Nights and discussing when they first got together and it was tried to be a business meeting and it didn't work and they went in and jammed. That I loved that story where they just started jamming and Sammy would come in, start scatting to Summer Nights and coming up, and Ed was just like, wow, this guy, and Don Landy, apparently his jaw dropped and said, I think we've got a band here. That story, got me all like warm and fuzzy and the goosebumps. Right. I was like, man, that's where the magic was, I think, for that Sammy lineup, for the Sammy Hagar sort of Van Halen. Hearing them talk about that stuff was magical.
It is. It's like a dream. Can you imagine being Sammy? And Sammy had some fame, right? Montrose. He had a pretty good solo career. I knew Sammy because I'm a guitar player, but he wasn't worldwide known at that time.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being Sammy, going into 5150 Studios, going into jam, and Ed breaks out Summer Nights? Like really?
Yeah.
Mind-blowing.
Mikey, the part where Sammy talks truthfully about allowing Ed to concentrate on the music, and he didn't want to touch that. He just wanted to complement what they were already doing. I thought that was something that needs to be highlighted, because that's a sign of an amazing musician themselves, to allow people to be and create the way they're supposed to and be who they are. Because he could have easily come in and said, I've got these 15 songs that I was about to release. I want to do these. These are my songs. He didn't. He just stepped back and allowed the music to be Van Halen instead of trying to change that, which I thought that was something that's a pretty unique quality and an amazing example of a brilliant musician, in my opinion.
Awesome. I've got another question for you guys, if you don't mind me asking. So what do you guys think about Sammy doing some of those licks that Eddie, obviously did on the album, but couldn't play because Ed was doing the keyboards? I'm going to say he did a pretty good job. Clearly sounds completely different from Ed Hoss. So, but yeah, you can understand why, when they had the technology to go back and just get that to be played, and then on tape or whatever, and then they got Eddie to play the guitar parts. But, again, a band that wasn't scared, Hoss, Brad and Mikey, in getting their lead singer to do some of these guitar parts.
Great. He's a great player, Sammy. I mean,
yeah, he is.
Great player. I mean, they opened the show with, when they come out with Only One Way to Rock, he's rocking that song. He does a lead with that song. And I always remembered Why Can't This Be Love? The first single was huge. And the guitar parts, even the solo, the double stops, Simon and Brad, I mean, he nails them. He sounds great. Full sound, good tone, good feel, never hits a bad note. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better than that.
I think they enjoyed it too. Sorry to cut you off, Hoss. I think they enjoyed it to the fact that it was probably like another bit of barbed wire to, the old era of Van Halen, that they actually had someone diverse enough to sing, play, allow Ed to be a keyboard player. It was probably just another part of, unintentionally maybe, but they allowed that freedom for Sammy to play guitar instead of it just being Ed Van Halen playing guitar only. So I know David Lee Roth played acoustic and things like that, and Ice Cream Man and stuff, but to allow, you got the world's at the time the world's biggest electric guitar player in a band, and he's playing keyboards, and another person who's singing in the band playing all the lead parts. That's allowing musical freedom there, in my opinion.
I'll tell you what that is, Brad. That is ballsy beyond words from my point of view. I mean, there's no way that Ed and Al and Mikey didn't, and Sammy too, there's no way they didn't know that they were going to come under massive fire when Sammy stepped onto the stage with a guitar. There's just You know, there's just no way. So the fact that they just all obviously unanimously thought that that was a great idea shows so much conviction and balls to me. It really does. And, you know, what was one of the things that reminds me of in the doco that it was really heartening is, which I wouldn't have guessed at the time, is how many people were there with like banners and T-shirts and said that basically to the effect of "See you, Dave." You know, I think that would have been really heartening for Sammy to see when he walked out on the stage with them each night, because it must have been scary as hell. You know,
100%.
But especially like, you know, the conviction of Sammy to go out there with a guitar strapped on, and you know, he had a completely different vibe to Roth. He had a completely different look. He even had the headset mic, which was a pretty new thing in 1985. You know, we forget that. That's a long time ago.
And the short hair. His hair was shorter than Ed's.
Short curly hair, you know, this kind of Shirley Temple hair, which was a bit of a unique look in rock bands. Everyone had
Jay.
long, straight hair at the time, you know. Hey, Jay, how you doing, brother? So, you know, I mean, you just have to say that their solidarity and conviction is admirable and commendable, because I honestly couldn't tell you if I would have had that much conviction if I was them at the time. I would have been really shy about pulling off some of those things.
Awesome. Hey, John.
Yeah.
That blows me
All
away.
the cool
Make
kids.
2 great points. Again, Haas, that, you know, Sammy joins the band. Dave's probably arguably the biggest front man in rock at that time. So it's not like he's joining the band as a bass player or a drummer or a guitar player. He's, you know, the front man. So,
Yeah, and it's not like Roth was just a singer. He was an entertainer. He was the whole thing. So to exact what you're saying, go on.
and the humility of Ed. I mean, here's the guitar king of the world, being humble enough to be like, hey, Sam, get up here, get a guitar, let's go. Like, you know, I don't know if Jimmy Page would do something like that. He always said about Zeppelin's 4 guys and I play guitar and that's it, right? Like, Ed's like, you know, he's open to it. He's the humility. He's humble about it, you know, and you see that in the documentary about like Ed says it, we're equals. There's no ego. So he makes one comment about Dave saying that he was the big cheese, it was the ego. He's like, we're all equals now. He's like, we make great music with Dave. I love it, but this is a different vibe, and you see it.
And he was only the big cheese because he spoke a lot.
Right. And I love Dave, but it was a different vibe and a different band, and I love that band.
Yeah, I love Dave too. So this is nothing for me to take away from Dave, because Dave fills my heart with joy and laughter in a way that kind of Sammy doesn't, actually. So they've both got their strengths and weaknesses. You know, I like to think that Dave is one set of colors of the rainbow and Sammy is the other set of colors. And between the two of them, they make all the colors, you know. But yeah, it's a classic. All right. One of the things that you can see is that, like I was mentioning before, that love affair. I reckon that when Sammy came into the fold and they realized this was really, they had something with this new guy, would have been the same feeling as when they first started doing the backyard parties with Dave in like 77. You know,
Correct.
I feel like it was like a brand new, young, it had given them the elixir of youth, you know.
Can I bring up something? I want to bring up something with you guys and get your opinion on this. How do you think, for the bands, like Templeton was committing to David Lee Roth 1 week before they were meant to go recording, you know, so basically as a producer, they decided to do it on their own, and it freed them up to do whatever they wanted to do. And then the album is released and it goes to #1. How happy do you think that would make them and instill like a bit of strength and like, we can go forward from here? Do you think that would have given them a boost of confidence?
Yeah, I do. You know, I mean, obviously Templeman was the producer since the very beginning. And now you've got a situation with 5150, where, as we spoke about a few weeks ago, now you've got Mick Jones, you know, from Foreigner now producing. Yeah, I think that would have been, and having that record go #1 would have been incredible validation, because really they were throwing the baby out with the bathwater. They were throwing it all out and starting from scratch with a home studio, a new producer, a new singer, more keyboards, a singer that played guitar on stage, had short curly hair, and had a headset mic. I mean, you could not have a set of circumstances more completely different. But you know what? It must have been a perfect storm, because if you think about it, if they had got a basic, like a David Lee Roth kind of clone, everyone would have done is compared the new singer to David Lee Roth. And I think in a way, obviously it wasn't by design, it was by default, but the way that it turned out that Sammy was so different and that they had a new producer and the whole thing was perfect, because it meant that they were not comparable anymore, So I don't know if that answers your question, or is it a whole other thing?
No,
sorry.
No, it did. And I mean, for me, when I heard Ed talk about that in Unleashed, I was like, that's an honest statement there from the guy that was probably, in a nice way, shitting bricks. We're doing this on our own now. Hope this is successful. And it just, instilled that confidence in them that they can move forward now without David Lee Roth. I think that was a very important and integral part for them when that album went number one for them. That was like, yeah, we can do this now. We're still a band. We've still got something to offer.
Right.
Yeah. I want to share something with you guys too, and we discussed this a few times when we do these shows, but it's a point that we need to focus on sometimes and just remind ourselves of. What's really interesting, 86, 87, this album 5150 when it came out was a pop record. It was played, it was, top 10 stuff. It was played on in between Madonna and in between Whitney Houston songs. It's and I don't listen to a lot of pop music these days, but certainly it's not going to be something considered normal these days, guys. An album like this, when you consider the pedigree that this band had beforehand, and then all of a sudden being on your top 10, and guys like Mikey, 12 years old, listening to it, and then all of a sudden going to concerts, it was just mind blowing for me.
Yeah.
And you're right. Remember when 84 came out, MTV was just blowing up, right? Jump, Heavy Rotation, Panama, and Hot for Teacher, all the videos, right? And you're right. It was sandwiched between Madonna, Duran Duran, whoever in the 80s, Power Station, and all these other NXS, great Australian band. But it was bands, diverse, and it was nice to see that. But it was the cherry on the cake was like, and the icing on the cake was seeing Van Halen wedged right in there for masses to see, right? It wasn't just our little baby anymore, and it was pop culture. And same thing when 5150 came out, 86, 87, MTV exploded, got that much bigger, and the budgets for the videos got that much bigger, right? Millions of dollars into videos. Now, I remember when they made Jump, they might have spent, I don't know, $6,000, $8,000 or something like that. By the time 5150 came out, the budgets were like movies, right?
Which is interesting, though, Mikey, because, of course, they basically did no video clips for that record, which is another ballsy move, right? Because we're now in the MTV era, and Jump and Panama and all those things you just mentioned were so successful.
Right.
And even some of them on relatively little spend, really, for the day. And yet with 5150, what do we get? We got a Blue Angels clip for Dreams. Well, sorry, but whatever. And
well, I think we spoke about this. I think it was a timeline. They were going on tour, right? The album came out, and they had this little window, and they couldn't do it. And they're like, screw it, we're just going to film the whole concert and put it out. That'll be our video.
Do you know what else I suspect, although I've not read this anywhere specifically? I suspect that Roth was so always in their ear for the flash and the getting on TV kind of element of it that they were actually just glad to take a break from it completely and make it about the record, I mean, who knows? But that's, people always have an opposite and equal reaction when they've been under pressure for a while. And I think Roth would have been going on and on and on about music videos, MTV, that when they had Sammy and realized they had a number one record, they were like, you know what? Screw the music videos and MTV. This is about the music.
Right. We're going on tour. We'll film the tour.
We're going on tour, yeah.
And we'll film and put it out.
That's a massive valid point there, Hoss. I think you're right, 100%. I honestly believe they were probably exhausted by the whole video MTV thing. you know.
Yep.
The
It
is
happens
awesome.
to bands. It happened to Pearl Jam in the 90s, the overexposure, right? After the 10 album came out, not to get off the Van Halen subject really quickly, but 10 sold so many millions of copies and they made those 3 videos. And then the band was like, we're too exposed. We're everywhere, right? And they stopped making videos. They're like, we're done. We're pulling back. And they became like the Neil Young kind of
Yeah, right.
mentality or philosophy about a band. Like, the fans will find us. We don't need to go on MTV. So you're right. I bet you they retreat a little bit. Dave was the showman, do the videos, do this, and Ed and the band's about the music. They pulled back a little bit and focused on music and the tour.
Yeah, and especially if the resentment and bitterness that would have been still very much there for all of them, as you can see from this doco, with Roth wanting to go off and, you know, in quotations, be a movie star, then the last thing they ever wanted to do was get on TV because they associated that with Roth, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Brad, I want to share this with you guys too. So, you know, the Rolling Stones, when they toured America in '69, realised that for once their audience was listening to their music, as opposed to the previous tours where they were just screaming, a little bit like the Beatlemania stuff, and they weren't listening. The audience had grown up, and they were sitting back and they were absorbing what the band had to say. You know, so during the Unleashed, the video, they're interviewing a couple of guys in the crowd waiting to go in to see the gig. And they're interviewing a couple of young guys. And one guy says something really, really interesting. You know, he's quite an articulate young guy. And he's saying, look, you know, this band, and he's sticking up for this version of Van Halen. He's saying this band's talking about dreams. He's talking about what young people want, our aspirations for the future. You know, and this is something that me as a 12th grade or whatever, you know, this is important to me in my life now because this is what I'm doing. And I'm going, that, you know, kind of similar, you know, for not saying that they weren't listening to Van Halen with David Lee Roth, but I think that some of the fans had grown up and they were actually listening to the music as opposed to just partying to it. Does that make sense? Now, am I making some kind of sense there, Mikey?
I think so. I mean, I was 12 at the time, but I think you're right. You know, the 70s, we all know when Van Halen broke on the scene, backyard parties, they were a party band. They kicked ass, right? Mighty Van Halen. I think then the 80s come along and times changed, even, you know, economically, socially. We have video, we have new streams of media. And all of a sudden people get, you know, some songwriters and bands start writing about a little more political kind of stuff. And it gets beyond that. Everyone, like you said, the maturity in the music, the level changes a little bit. And I think Van Halen, in getting at that age, you know, most of them were married at this point, and they weren't that, they were still a party rock band, but they weren't that band.
Sure.
So I think the maturity level in the songs for sure, and the fans as well that came up with them before me. You're right. It was an older crowd, still a younger crowd, but I think it was like that next phase of Van Halen, right? It was the second phase, a little bit more mature, a little bit older. Been around the block, wasn't their first rodeo anymore. They had 2 huge albums. You know, 1984 went to number 2. Every album was huge, but commercially. And now 5150 goes to number 1. I think now they were legitimate pop rock stars, right? And it was a different kind of era.
Yeah, but to what you guys are saying, I mean, I think it would have given them extra validation. Of course, they're older now. They're at a different part of their lives. When they began, they're in their early 20s. And, you know, they're singing about girls on the beach. You know, I mean, that's what and why wouldn't you? That's what they're thinking about. And, you know, and at this time, they're talking about love comes walking in. They're talking about dreams. Right. And they're talking about things that maybe resonate to humans on a slightly deeper level. And so when those songs that aren't just about girls on the beach anymore, I mean, obviously some are, but a lot of the album wasn't. And then it goes number 1. That must have been incredible validation too. That's like, you know what, when you sing what's real, people respond to it, you know? And
and you're right, Hoss, and the audience, as young as they were picking up on that too. You know, they were picking up on it, which blows me away because, you know, that's always something, you know, that a musician or a band, obviously, you know, as much as they might try to say it's not a priority for them, but, you know, music's about motivating people and effecting some kind of change and some kind of enjoyment. So if people are picking up on your message, well, you've succeeded, Hoss and Brad and Mikey.
Yeah, 100%. And, I never even really thought about this consciously, I have to admit, but it's just occurred to me now, even with the four of us talking about it, that with the show that I'm putting on at the Corner Hotel, I'm starting the second set with a song basically about girls, which is good enough. And girls and food. So the two main things, two main food groups. And then, but then we're finishing the show with Dreams, which obviously, as we know, has a much more sentimental kind of thing to it. And
deeper.
It's probably no accident that even subconsciously my mind wanted to structure the second half of the show like that. So you start with the party songs and you finish with the soulful songs, because that's the message you want to leave everyone with. But, even that kid on the doco talking about it, he couldn't be more than about 21 or 22. And even he's acknowledging that, other guys are talking about more meaningful things these days,
Right.
But, even that kid on the doco. So, yeah.
I love the way they do that. I mean, if you fast forward to For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, they still do it. They could write Pound Cake about the girls, and they could write right now about social issues, right?
Agreed.
It's great to have both and have that creative freedom that they developed in this 5150 era.
I agree. It had both. And to, pardon the pun, but it was more about balance, and whereas the earlier stuff, and we all love the earlier stuff, but it isn't just that we were younger when those first 6 Roth albums were done. The whole music scene was more, the whole rock and roll scene was more innocent, and it was more about, it more felt like in the world, like a springtime, 9/11 hadn't happened yet. And all of this other stuff, it was a high in terms of the history of those decades. And so everything was a little bit more just, let's just talk about the surface level things that we're having fun with,
Right.
So it isn't just that all of us were younger. I actually think it's that history was a little younger as well. And we hadn't experienced all these things we've now experienced,
That's great. That's great analogy right there, because think about it in the 70s, right? Rock and roll wasn't that deep. There was a few bands that were doing it, like Steely Dan and stuff, but most rock and roll was party rock and fun. It wasn't deep, right? Like we all went to rock concerts to escape everything, right? We wanted to rock and roll, sex, drugs, rock and roll, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then, it changed, right? At some point, it's like, how much of that could you write about? After doing 3 or 4 albums of, Take Your Whiskey Home and Bottoms Up, it's great. I love it. At some point, it's like AC/DC. You're making the same album. It's great. AC/DC can make the same album 30 times. I love it. But for Van Halen, it had to evolve into something different.
Yeah.
So it's inevitable then. It was inevitable that this band was going to evolve then. It was inevitable.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, do you want to jump on with us? Chris, you've got the link there. Jump on, brother.
Give me a second. Men's room is calling.
Jump on, Keith. Jump on, Chris, and hang out with us.
One of the bits, one of the bits, guys, that I love in the live footage is when you see them performing and they come out, and which part is it? I'm just trying to remember now. It just dawned on me when they is it the Best of Both Worlds, where Sammy and Ed doing the guitar and vocal response thing, and he's scatting and they're playing at that. That to me was something I think Ed may have wanted to be able to have that connection with the singer for a long time. And I think it just resonates in that tiny, whatever it is, 30 seconds or whatever there. It's like, wow, you can see how happy they are. It's just amazing. That to me was like worth watching the whole episode for that. Just that alone was amazing.
I'm not going to read Hobo Roadie's comment, but you guys can read that for yourselves. If you guys know Hobo Roadie, that is a typical wonderful Hobo Roadie comment. But guys, I'm going to drop into the chat another fellow Van Halen fan all the way from New Zealand. His name is Chris. Please welcome Chris to the show, guys. Hey, brother, how are you?
How you going? Nice.
Good to see you. You know everybody here. You know everyone. Introduce yourself.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, you doing, brother? Seeing you guys. Whoa.
Thanks for joining us. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Right.
I've got my Ed coming. Until then.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Awesome.
How
Yeah,
my
don't worry, Chris. My Ed's still coming as well. If that makes you feel any better. So yeah. Very nice. Very
like
nice.
I was thinking about like watching this, and I was like, yeah, all the notes and the ideas. And just the other day, I was watching the Zoe show with you guys, and Brad said something on the lines of, "Well, I had plans of what I was going to say, and I just winged it, and it's the best way to do it." And that's totally what I'm doing here. Not that matters. What I will say about the video is, and I knew it for years and years until I saw this, which wasn't through YouTube, was that Eddie's doing the elephant guitar.
Yeah,
all that stuff, and watching him warming up backstage right before going on, and obviously the crowd can hear it. You know, you'd be sitting in the crowd going, "Oh, dude," while he's just sitting there going, just
100%.
Very cool.
so cool.
Very, very cool indeed. Yeah.
What do you guys think of that vocal guitar ad lib thing at the start of Best of Both Worlds? That's what I was saying before Chris jumped in. What do you think, Chris? What do you think, Mikey?
Mikey,
What was that, Brett? I missed it.
The section of the very start of Best of Both Worlds where Sammy and Ed are exchanging guitar vocal sort of ad libbing, and it's so exciting for me. That was one of the best parts for me was watching that, because you could see how joyous they were doing that. What do you guys pick that vibe up, or was that just me being
No, absolutely. A couple of things jump out at me from memory when I watch Live Without a Net, and that's one of them. And the second one is when they're doing 5150, which the live version is phenomenal. The solo is incredible. And at the very end, when Sammy hits that high note on the outro of the song, and Ed looks at him and just like puts his arm up, and he's lit up. Like, he's always smiling, but extra smiling. Like, you could just see, like, wow, this is really as great as it was. This is a whole nother level. And like that, just like, I guess goosebumps when I watch that. Love it.
Yeah, it's such a cool time capsule watching them enjoying what they're doing. Obviously finding Sammy and going, okay, we can do this. It's working.
Right.
And, we can make it musical. The first, obviously Van Halen became mighty in the last, I suppose, 15 years, right? Of like backyard parties and then just getting to where they are. And then obviously before, like you're talking about like, about Dave being like, the talking one, but in Noel Monk's book, the old manager, he was saying that when he met them, like Ed and Alex were like the music guys, and Dave was like, "This is what we're gonna do. This is what we're gonna do," all the way, And so, and obviously, by the time he left, they'd had that, and you can see how happy they are just be making music and having the success of still having. So I love this video. Is a great snapshot of like showing them in the mid '80s. Totally, actually, genuinely enjoying everything, and it's really neat that they captured this on film.
Absolutely.
Another part I love in this is how they talk about Ed and Alex are talking about even the things you've read in books and the things we've learned since then, but it's from them. They're actually talking about it. The transition between, say, Ed being a drummer first and then ended up being a guitar player because Alex was at home playing his drums. He was out working to pay for
paper route.
Those sort of things were just amazing. And, even watching Alex talk about Ed, like even back then, how much he admired his brother, and just saying that, he never saw him without a guitar in his hands. He never saw him in the shower, but every other time he saw him he'd have a guitar in his hands. And that brotherhood, that's that's amazing. And you can see when you're watching that, you can see how vulnerable they were, and they were allowing themselves to be vulnerable by talking about it. It was just a really important part for me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I just want to back a comment up that Chris made about David Lee Roth, and we need to give him credit there because it's true what he said. Noel Monk makes that quite clear in his book that the business aspect of driving Van Halen in that initial period did come from David Lee Roth, mainly because of his dad too. His dad said, look, if you're going to get into music, you got to make it work. You got to run it like a business too. Right. You're out there having fun. I get it, son. I get it, but you got to run it like a business and make some money out of this. So the fact that that they can sit back in the mid 80s and be relaxed in this new band. Well, you know, a bit of that credit, financial credit, has to go back to the drive, I'm sure, that David Lee Roth made sure the Van Halens followed.
Right. And Andrew, you make a great point. We owe it all to Dave. You know the story when Gene Simmons flew him out to Casablanca and Neil Bogart passed on them to sign maybe Bad Company or somebody. Not Bad Company. It was another 70s band, but Ed wanted to quit. He was done. You know, the demo didn't get signed to Casablanca. Gene Simmons, you have the two guys in Kiss pushing you, promoting you, and your record label don't sign you. I think Ed was going to throw the towel in, and Dave was like, "We're going to do this." Like he pushed Ed and he pushed the brothers, and his tenacity made it happen. And then they got discovered, right, which was great, Ted Templeman. But maybe it would have went a different way if Dave wasn't there pushing them.
Yeah, I totally agree, Mikey. And Taylor in the comments made a really, really good point that before anyone wants to talk about the problem with perhaps Dave and his ego, got to always remember that it was Dave's idea to call the band Van Halen in the first place.
Correct.
You know, and that is a really important point that I actually always forget, that when people talk about, I mean, it was, who knows what they would have been called, but it was him that selflessly said, you know what, you guys call it after your last name. And I mean, say no more. To me, that says it all, you know.
Great point.
Yeah. So
I remember, sorry for being like a bit of a Kiss nerd in here too, but I remember I think the truth of the matter was that when Gene took them out, like Bill O'Coin, the original manager, and Paul Stanley both kind of went, don't sign this band, listen to them. We can't, you know, like I think they said that because Gene said that once. They were like, we're not signing this band. Look how they're on fire. It's great, but no, we got to concentrate because Kiss is on a bit of the rails. We've got the solo albums coming out. We got to keep these guys together. It's like the last thing we want is this band turning up.
Right.
Yeah. That's exactly right. But you know, I mean, we're so blessed that we got to hear a whole different side of Eddie and Alex because of a change of singers, which, like we were talking about before, we probably had Roth stayed in the band, we would never have got to hear this other side of Ed's writing. You know,
no, I agree.
And
a lot
Sammy's
of those
got a great
songs,
voice.
right? A lot of those songs he broke out were earlier '80s songs, right? That he had. You know, I think he had Dreams written. He had a lot of the keyboard songs written that maybe Dave just couldn't. They weren't right for Dave. Vocals.
Isn't that true? Isn't that true that when Dave was split, there was like Ed's like, but I've got all these songs ready.
I don't know. Actually, is that right?
I think Ed had songs written, and I think he had stuff shelved, and we even saw songs like Right Now, Re-Exposed Later, that was written around 84 and around those eras as well. So there was definitely music, but I think from my understanding, when they got Sammy in, they had a couple of ideas that they were rehearsing and jamming on. That's what I was under the impression anyway. So
Right.
You can actually, if you're very clever with your search terms on YouTube, you can find some of the original jams that Sammy did with them before the songs were finished.
Wow.
And man, that stuff is awesome to hear. I'm pretty sure that I've come across one. It's like good enough, but not finished. So it's kind of like the good enough riffs, but with Sammy singing some different words and stuff. It's very, very cool. So yeah, jump on YouTube and I think if you Google like 5150 demos or something like that, you'll find some stuff.
Hoss, I've heard that, and a long time ago, and I have to back up. I was shocked to hear it because I'd never heard it before, but I was pleasantly surprised. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, because what you can hear is exactly what Sammy's talking about in the Unleashed doco, in that they went into the 5150 studio and he just started almost scatting over the music they were playing.
Yeah,
and it's almost finished on a first take. It's, obviously they reworked some of the words as you do when you're writing a song, but that energy and even like their best guesses at like how this would go is 80% finished on the first or second jam. And that just goes to show the alchemy of what they were feeling back then,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was awesome. It's such a great insight to the very start of the Sammy era. This Unleashed. That's one thing. I wish we had something like this from the very start of Van Halen with David Lee Roth. But we're, how blessed are we to have this? And it's on YouTube. We can watch it anytime we like. And the footage in there, some of the live footage, the stories, the Lamborghini breakdown is how they met Sammy at the shop. And those sort of things are just gold. So those comments, the way they're discussing all that, it's and you can see how humorous Ed actually is in a lot of the conversations he's having in this as well. So, there's always a little bit of humor in there. And then, there were a few barbed wire comments, as we've mentioned before, towards David Lee Roth, but they were also complimentary to him as well, without sort of, what an amazing time for the band to go from being one of the biggest rock bands in the world, and then they're going through a transition with a new singer. You couldn't even imagine what that'd be like for the brothers and Mikey to go through. That would be such a test for them to like you mentioned, Hoss, I think you mentioned earlier, they were saying they weren't sure where they were going. Or was it you, Mikey, you were talking about doing a guest performance record and stuff like that?
Yeah, it was Mikey. Yeah,
and they stuck to the Van
They stuck to
Halen.
their guns, right? And it had to be satisfying on that level, right? For, like I said earlier, 84 went to number 2, I think, on Billboard, and this went to number 1. I mean, that speaks volumes of what their ability to do was in a kind of a pressure cooker situation. You got a new singer coming in, you got a top band in the world, your singer leaves, and you're picking up the pieces, so to speak. And Sam come in with these great songs, you just knock it out of the park. Have a great tour, and you have all these radio hits. I mean, they must have been like literally on top of the world, right?
Oh yeah. It's one of the things that for me, and as I was mentioning at the start of the show, seeing it for the first time really this week with fresh eyes and in fresh ears, it was really cool to actually see Alex speaking so much, because there's not much stuff you can find of Alex doing interviews, and even since Ed has passed, we know he's been very quiet. Which is fine. It's totally understandable. But he's such an incredible, unique and influential drummer, more than actually what he's given credit for in the drum circles, I think, because most of the drummers I know cite him as being like an incredibly unique influence on the drumming world. And yet he's quite silent, So for me, watching this and hearing Alex speak so much was really, really cool. And one of the other things that I just loved, and Keith Campbell in the comments brought up just before, actually a little bit ago, about how obviously this was kind of where things started changing with Mikey too, because as we know, they came up with this new deal where poor old Mikey wouldn't get any royalties anymore, which always to this day breaks my heart. It's one of the very few things that I just go, oh, Ed, really, man? Yeah. Come on, because his vocal and his bass playing and his energy and his personality, he's almost like one of the characters of Kiss. I'm sorry. I understand wanting to put your son in, but I don't understand wanting to take one of the characters of Kiss, so to speak, out of the band, because Mikey was that for all of us. And to see Mikey and Alex still in a period where like Mikey was up on stage in Soundcheck and they were jamming together, and he was doing that thing where he was lighting the drumstick on fire like a big cigar, that just filled my heart with so much joy. And to think that it just not long after that, it went so sour between them is a little bit sad, but that's how it is.
I think that's a great point, Simon. I think that would have been rectified had Ed still been around. They talk about the kitchen sink tour. They were going to bring Mike back and everyone back, right? Dave and Sammy. And, think about Led Zeppelin. For years, Page and Plant got all the writing credits, even on stuff like Kashmir and Black Dog, which John Paul Jones wrote the riff. So Jonesy ran into some financial difficulties in the 2000s. He took on a production company, started producing some different bands. Jimmy Page and Robert Plant went back and redid all the publishing and cut Jonesy in on a lot of those songs.
Wow, that's cool.
I'm willing to, around the time they did Mothership, they cut Jones in to get some royalties. I'm willing to bet.
In fact, Mothership was specifically for that reason.
Right. Oh. So I think had Ed still been with us, and they did the kitchen sink, and Mikey was back in the good graces, maybe, Ed was a different person, right? He came out the dark side, came out the other side. He was clearly, clearly sober, a great player, at the top of his game again. The 2015 tour was phenomenal.
I think you raise a good point there, Mikey, and thank you for raising that, because, again, Clapton did the same thing too with the Cream reunion tour, to give Ginger and also Jack Bruce a bit of money, even though Jack Bruce was getting some royalties for some of the songs that he wrote.
Right.
But it was certainly a situation for the rest of, these other guys to get a big bite of the apple. So I think you're right. I think it may have gone down that path. So good on you. Good on you, Mikey, for bringing it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but it was heartening to still see them in all that, like all these things we now discuss on these shows. It was great to see that all of that stuff hadn't quite unfolded yet. It was still, everything was all right. And
what did you think? What did you think, guys, of during the video where you mentioned Alex before, Hoss? But there's even a segment there where he's telling you about his gear. He's telling you that he's using thick,
the thickest sticks you can get.
The thickest sticks, and he describes his kit and all that. So he takes 30 seconds to go through that process. So that in itself was revealing. I think the fact that he realised that he had a big role to play in where this band was going to go when David Lee Roth left. I think you're right there. I think he realised that he had a critical role to play.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think the whole Mikey thing, like you were talking about, Hoss, there's one thing I wrote down in my notes here. I loved seeing they highlighted Mikey a bit, like you said.
Yeah, me too.
Drums and actually seeing Mikey, they show some footage of him doing the BVs in some of the songs, and you can really hear, like In Love Walks In, and you can see Best of Both Worlds. You can see Mikey and Ed singing BVs together, like to get the harmonies, but you can really capture what Mikey's doing because they show him visually, so he's singing that high one because you can see him going for it. It's really cool. Really,
I think Mikey hits the highest note ever recorded, other than Celine Dion during Get Up on live shows. You know the chorus I'm talking about. The note is off the charts, Simon. I don't even know if it's a note.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't know how we're going to pull off that live, Mikey, but where there's a will, there's a way. We'll figure out something.
You'll do it.
No, that's insane, that note. But that's a big one for me. And just hearing Alex and Mikey sort of coming in together in certain songs where they come in together, you can just see they were like a powerhouse. A lot of rhythm section, you couldn't go wrong with, as a guitarist or keyboard player or a singer, with those guys behind you. They were like so tight, they were in the pocket, just unbelievable.
Totally.
Yeah. Sorry, go on, Chris. Go on.
No, I was just going to ramble on about Mikey's side of the stage and remember the bit full of his picks.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah.
And the draw of Jack Daniels.
Of course, the draw.
I love how they go. Yeah, I love that. No, I love that. I loved how they highlighted Mikey's side of the stage and his drawers where his picks are and the T-shirt in there, and that's just really cool. Just to see
when he does this move.
Yeah.
That's it.
Absolutely.
Hold on, guys. Here, I have to highlight you. All right, do it again. I'm gonna come on, Mikey, and then Hoss. You guys do it so well. Look at that. All right, Hoss, got your one.
Wait, what?
Oh Lord, Chris is going to get a pick.
I used to do that in my first cover bands when I was a teenager, and we called it the Mikey. I mean, that's people don't understand the influence that these people had on us when we were young. It's quite a thing. It's quite a thing.
Here he is.
Hey!
One hell long to laugh.
Okay, we'll keep it on there. We're timing, brother. We're timing.
Oh God. Yeah,
I hate
I'm
to bring
still-
this up, but I'm about to get picked up by none other than Jerry Pantazis, who's going to do the driving for the next couple of hours for my gig down on the coast. So I'll have to love yous and leave yous in obviously, and leave everyone in the chat in very capable hands with you four.
Let me be a gearhead for a minute because I love guitars more than like we all do. So what amps are you using tonight?
Tonight, it'll be a backline, which means it'll probably be some kind of Fender combo. It's most likely to be a deluxe reverb or a blues deluxe, something like that.
Nice.
And which means what I take down is just one of my main kind of Strat style guitars and my pedal board. And on the pedal board, I've got an EQ pedal and a couple of what I call utility pedals. So no matter how bad that backline amp is going to sound, I can kind of quickly whip it into some kind of shape.
What are they? What's your utility, dude?
I've got a Wampler compressor, which I use just a little bit, just to make it spongy a little.
Does it help sustain?
I add a little sustain, but really it's not about that. It's mainly just about getting the overall volume of the clean sound up. And the other thing that I couldn't live without when I'm doing backline gigs is I've got an EQ pedal, which so then if I've got the bass on full on the amp and there's still not enough bass, then I can wind some in on the EQ pedal. So
I'm the same, boss. I'm the same fly gigs. So I just have a little Boss EQ, graphic EQ for that exact reason.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's having an EQ pedal on a fly gig board is, for me, if you could have no other pedal at all, and I mean literally none, that's what I would have, an EQ pedal. Because, and I was stupid. I didn't learn this for a very long time. I mean, I guess EQ pedals weren't super common. They weren't the sexy pedals, you know.
Secret weapon, though.
But it's a secret weapon when you don't know what amp you're going to get. It absolutely is a secret weapon. And one other thing that is a bit of a secret weapon is a really low gain pedal. That's like what I call an always on. So if you get if you get like a Fender Twin, which is crazy clean, but you want a little bit of grit, you can wind some gain in without increasing the volume.
Right.
So EQ and a low gain pedal, which I'm using the Wampler
Boss
Bell.
Overdrive.
Yeah, so the one I'm using as the grit is a Wampler Bell, which is essentially like a Nobles ODR1.
Right.
So it's got that Nashville little bit of grit breakup kind of Telecaster thing, and I love that as an always on pedal. It's killer.
Right.
Yeah. 100%. That's awesome, boss. Because now I feel comfortable with my setup. It's very similar to yours by the sounds of it.
Yeah, cool. Well, Brad, we're still going to have that hang day. You're coming around to my studio, going to look at my pedal board. You bring yours, and we'll nerd out.
Yeah, we'll do that in the next. We'll organise it offline.
Perfect. Well, everyone, have a lovely afternoon. You guys hold fort, and Chris, awesome to have you on the show, brother. After all this time, seeing you in the chat, and Mikey.
Did you guys see that random thing I sent you?
No, what was
I think
that?
it's up on the channel. I think it's up on the channel to do with getting the picks.
I'll check it out.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, seen that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And Mikey, as always, a pleasure, brother. Thanks for being on. And Brad, Andrew, the illustrious host. Thank you.
We'll see you in a fortnight, bro.
Yes, see you in a fortnight. And actually, that's going to be getting dangerously close to the Corner Hotel show. So maybe if we want, we should make that about my preparations for the gig. And Brad and I can do a rig rundown and we'll do all of that stuff.
Sounds good, brother. Sounds good.
Well, love
That's
you
amazing.
all. Thank you, everyone in the chat. I can even do like a current shout out of where we're at if you want, Andrew, because I've been keeping a list of everyone who's
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Do it. Yeah. You earn your salary. Do a shout out before you go.
Well, so even the show's continuing on, but to everyone that's in the chat as it stands right now, we've got Nelson Rodriguez. Taylor, thanks for your comments, brother, and thank you for reminding us about David Lee Roth suggesting the Van Halen name. Jay Hannon, good to see you, Jay. Johnny Heartbreaker, John Conklin, legend, Helen Winter, Holly Lewis, Mark Effects, Greggy Brown, who was the sound front of house guy for when I toured with Tommy Emmanuel. Good to see you, Greggy.
Wow, Greggy.
Hayden Crone, James Backer, Quentin James, Johnny Bean was doing a flyby, Joe Ocapinti, my guitar tech. Hey, Joe. Thomas Santiago, Hobo Roadie, Robert Ranford, Dan of New Jersey, John ZD35134, Tim Thomas, Ellen Vorenshine, Chris Hunter, Keith Campbell, Charmaine at 4 a.m. in the UK, and Gretch Zeppelin. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers, brother. Rock and roll.
See you in 2 weeks, everyone.
Good
Cheers,
luck.
brother.
Woohoo!
Yes. Well,
So Chris. Sorry, bro. I was just going to mention. So Chris and I, we never got to see this Unleashed until the 1990s, like you, Brad. We were never privileged to see it, but I'd be keen to hear Chris's story. When did you see Unleashed, Chris? Can you remember when you saw the actual documentary?
My good friend called YouTube. That would just been found on one of the things you'd find on YouTube. I spend most of my spare time just going through guitar stuff, you know.
That's
That's
right.
Yeah.
Hence the elephant guitar thing, because when I finally saw it, I was like, oh, that's from that.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're right back.
It's funny
But I'm
because
new, so I'm new to it too, kind of like you guys were. But I want, if you probably like you guys, is love behind the scenes stuff and seeing the bands and their lives and what's going on, you know. And so imagine being back in '86 when this was on MTV and being like, because you know, like you guys said, there was nothing in the Diamond Dave era, you know.
yeah, it's a pity that didn't have something like that.
Yeah, because we all know all the stories from the magazines and the internet and the books, and like the rest of you guys, you're just soaking in as much as we can. But back then, it would have been golden.
Yeah, Andrew, just quickly, I want to mention, looking at the way that the screen is right now, it looks like you're sitting on Ed's shoulders, like you look like you're playing that guitar.
It's not bad, eh, bro?
Oh, man, that looks grouse. Make sure you move your shoulders just a bit. That's it. Perfect.
Yeah, and nod your head to the beat.
Okay, so we got screenshot at 1:33.
I love it. Sorry, I had
Yeah.
to pick it up. Sorry, Andrew. I didn't
Yeah,
mean to
mate.
but,
Oh God bless you. God bless you for pointing that out. That's made my day.
It's fantastic.
I had to pick it up.
But look, I got to agree with you guys. Isn't it great though about the YouTube? You know, if you haven't had access to this information, like Hoss mentioned before, he hadn't seen this before until we flicked him the link this week, and he saw it with some fresh eyes. I saw it in 92, 93 on a VHS, on a dubbed VHS, and just blown away with the fact that we could actually hear Eddie Van Halen talk about something, because we never got that here. And the same thing with you, Brad. You know, we never got it. And now all this, you know, I'm not going to say young people, but people now can just go on to YouTube, and isn't it great? And just key in and get just about anything you want, any history on any band. It's phenomenal.
It's amazing. I think even in the early days of learning guitar, I think about this a lot, actually, you know, because most of the stuff I had to learn through just listening back and forwards. Now you can actually view, excuse me, someone actually playing it. You know, you can actually go and watch someone perform it, whether it's the original artist or not. Like, you want to watch Ed playing a particular solo, there's a good chance you're going to find it.
Yeah, same. Like you watch so many people like playing it, and you're like, then you go find some live footage, and you find out which one you're watching in their bedroom is playing it in the right place. You know?
Yeah.
And the one I found on YouTube was a golden moment, you know, because I learnt by records too. There's a slow button, you know, on YouTube. You can slow videos down, and if you slow it down just halfway, the pitch doesn't go down, and it's still the same pitch. You know, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I've corrected a few things I learned through, you know, the stuff I've learned by ear through just watching like the footage, just going, now I understand what's going on there. And it might just trigger that little thing you were missing. So it's integral with Ed's playing, especially to watch him play it, I think, more so than just listening, because he was such an alien when it came to playing. He wasn't thinking in the traditional standard way of playing, which is highlighted by Alex in this Unleashed episode. He talks about that. he talks about that, and even Sammy says he's an alien. He was an alien. Yeah. So
Sorry, bro, I didn't see you sitting there.
Bathroom, quick bathroom
Hey,
break.
And
Sorry,
even
brother.
Ed says that in that MTV special too. He goes, if you do it all by the rule book, then where are you going to go? So I chuck the rule book out and just do it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the confidence though that these guys had too, and Mikey, you're an American, so you need to give us a little bit of this perspective. You got to, and they weren't even Native Americans. They'd only they came from another country. So just having that confidence to even think like that. Self-taught. I don't care about rules. I play the guitar my way, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't, well, we don't care. And there's no arrogance to that comment. It's just, we're just doing what we have to do, Mikey.
Right. I believe you. Sorry, the battery's running low on my phone, but I think it was a mental toughness for both Ed and Alex coming here. Right.
Okay.
Being Dutch, growing up, not knowing the language, going to school. Ed often said he got picked on and stuff. And their dad was a classically trained jazz musician, right? So they had that element of they knew their chops, they knew their music, and they had this mental toughness of their upbringing, and that came through the music, and that gave them the confidence that when they started to break as a band, that they just powered forward, like nothing was going to stop them. If the adversity they went through growing up as kids, coming to a new country, not knowing the language, getting picked on in school, and all that kind of stuff, all that DNA was in them and came out in the music. So it was very unique.
And I'm going to add one other thing too, and I've mentioned this before on a couple of other streams. I went to school with a lot of Dutch guys, or guys from who were descendants from Dutch guys, Dutch families. And I'm going to tell you something. If we're going to classify my experience with Dutch people, they're hard workers, man. They work, mate. Here in this country, Dutch people, they get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and they work till 10. They have a reputation for working. So that doesn't surprise me that the Van Halens were doing this, because that's my direct experience with Dutch people.
Absolutely.
Totally fundamentally to cliche the American story. Come from another place, come to America.
Yeah.
Bang, Van Halen.
Yeah. What they come with $50?
Yeah.
Ed's story was they came with like $50. And
$50, bro.
I mean, it's amazing. It is the American dream. God bless them. And thank God for us that we got the music forever.
Hey,
back to the Unleashed thing. When one particular performance that I love is Summer Nights. The footage, like, it's so exciting. And the guitar playing in the solo, man. I kind of wish that we heard that on the actual record. It's phenomenal. It's just in this particular version of Summer Nights, it's just sensational. Do you guys remember seeing that solo?
Yes.
But it's effortless, and he gets every note. I rewound that. Well, rewound it, if you can use that old word.
You're cool.
You use the bar. I back barred it, and every note is spot on. He never missed a note.
Andrew, you make a great point. I mean, being 12 years old and starting to play this thing and watching Ed do that, you want to put it. I put my guitar down for weeks. I'm like, I'll never attain that. It's so effortless. It's so flawless. Doesn't hit a bad note. The guitar is literally a part of his body. But it was funny because I remember when I first saw the documentary and seeing Ed on that tour and seeing the little Steinberger guitar, I wasn't into it. I know it was the 80s. I was into the Kramers and all, like Les Pauls. And I'm like, why is he playing this stupid little guitar? I had no idea.
Now we all want one.
Right. I had no idea what a trans trem was and a pitch shifter. I had no idea. I was 12. I'm like, why is he playing that little stupid guitar? Like, now I'm like, wow.
Hey, just talking about guitars, Mikey, I have to ask, I see him on your Instagram, you share a lot of stuff, and I'm so grateful for the stuff you do share with us. But for our channel, can you highlight some of your guitars here for us, man? I know you showed your Frankie and your Music Man, but show us your guitars, mate. Show us.
Yeah, I'll show you a few I have in the back.
Yeah, let's have a look at them, man. Bring them up. Show them
and when
off.
he's done, And when he's done that, we'll get Chris to show a couple too. I'm sure he's got a couple there. Cool.
Yes.
Okay.
This is a 78 Eruption Strat. So this is right mocked as Ed's first guitar, right? It doesn't have a Floyd. It's got a classic Strat trem. It's got the slanted DiMarzio Super Distortion in there. Has the one pot, right? Just a tone knob. And I believe this one is the old Kramer bodies they used to use, which is called Poplar. So it's kind of light, and it's got here's a neck there.
Oh yeah,
you can see the back here. I did some shaving on it to get it down as thin as I possibly could.
Nice.
So this is like just your basic, the first era of the Frankenstein, the black and white. It's like a 78 mock-up.
It's legit. That's what it is. Whoa.
I have to admit, guys, I'm a bigger fan of the black and white than the black, red, and white. I love that version of the Frankie.
Right.
Okay.
And this is a 79 mock-up of a B before he got Ed got the Floyd Proto. So again, it's kind of like this one happens to be a Wilkinson trem. I went with the chrome when, very briefly he had a chrome like speed telly knob on there.
Yeah.
And in there I got a white Seymour Duncan custom. So he had the double whites in there. He had a zebra at times. He had the Mighty Mite red one. But a lot of the pictures you see the double white.
Wow.
And what I did up here was we went with when he had the Charvel headstock on, and he covered up the Charvel logo. So if you look closely, you might be able to see a piece of black tape over the logo.
Yeah,
So this one's right, and it's got a brass nut, compensated brass nut. So this is like a 79 tribute guitar.
Because the Bumblebee did have a brass nut, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the early ones he did, before he got the locking trem and the locking nut, Ed would use the compensated brass nuts, drop some 3-in-1 oil in there,
Yeah.
and would help him keep the strings in tune when he used the whammy bar.
God, I love guitars.
So this is the this is version 2 of Frankie in 79 when he painted over the black and white and made it red.
Wow.
And this is when he evolved into a Floyd. And here I got an EVH humbucker.
Beautiful.
And this is typically a dummy coil, but this coil actually wired to work. And my tone is a push-pull, so I can get a Stratty kind of sound, like a Stratocaster sound there.
Cool.
And, the burn marks up on the headstock.
Nice.
Oh wow.
And I'll show you guys one more.
Oh, no, keep going, son. Keep going. Yeah, come on.
This is like a newer edition.
To dive it down.
Yeah, this is the 1984 Kramer
Nice.
Beretta. You can see,
It's got a beautiful neck, right? Beautiful feeling neck.
Yeah, really slim, thin neck, fast neck. It's got a Seymour Duncan JB push pull, so you can split the coils. I know Brad knows about that. You too, Chris.
Yeah.
So this is the newer one I picked up last year, which is fantastic tribute guitar. I love it. I love the paint work.
Yeah.
That's gorgeous. Hey, can you show us the wolf?
I was just going to say that. Sorry, I'll calm down.
And this is another one that's a tribute.
Oh,
this
this is
is
a relic.
Yeah, this is a relic
last touring one, right?
It's got a Floyd. And here again, these I have Seymour Duncan Pearly Gates, the Reverend Billy Gibbons pickups. I wanted to try them out.
Yep.
And some of the detail, Ed put the white tape around this bucker here so the E string wouldn't get stuck on it.
Yeah.
And kill switch.
You're a scientist. It's amazing.
Right.
Did you put this together, Mikey, or?
Yeah, this one was a buddy of mine helped put this together.
Right.
And I did some of the work on the top.
Yep.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
How do you find the pearly gates?
A friend of mine owns a music store.
You had to find them tone-wise. Sorry, bro.
A buddy of mine had the pearly gates. They sound great. They're really creamy, and the neck pickup's nice and creamy and warm, kind of like the pound cake sound from 92, 91. And the bridge pickup's got a lot of bite to it, so I like them.
Yeah, nice.
So it's
beautiful
interesting. I have
guitars.
another B. I have an EVH-B that's in the shop right now. And my same buddy who got me those pickups, in his shop, he had an actual 79 DiMarzio Super Distortion that was in a 1980 Les Paul, a custom. So I'm going to have a actual 79 Seymour Duncan Distortion in my EVH-B, which I'll be getting back hopefully in about a week or two. So I'm actually excited for that mostly. So it'll be like the Ed sound, like the Ed 79 sound.
Wow.
Oh, beautiful, man.
Thank you, brother, for showing us those. Chris, have you got some guitars handy?
Yeah, sure do. But so, like, have you by any chance like been able to compare like that 78 Distortion to a one that comes out kind of like in the last 20 years?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris. They make the ones now.
Yeah. Can you hear a tonal difference?
Well, I haven't heard this actual 79, but supposedly these things are off the charts. Like, you know, it's actually the Ed sound, the bite, that whole thing. But so I've heard some of the 90s Super Distortions, the DiMarzios, and they sound great. The newer ones I haven't played, but I'm sure they sound great too. But to have an actual 79 run of a Seymour of a Super Distortion DiMarzio, I'm hoping this thing is like everything I've heard and read. So I won't know. The proof will be in the pudding when I get it in like a week. So I'm just very excited to actually that a friend of mine located one, had it in his shop, and he held it for me because he knows I'm an Eddie Van Halen nut. He called me up. He was super excited. He's like, "You got to bring your B in. You're not going to believe what I have in my shop." I'm like, "What do you have?" He's like, "I have a 1979 DiMarzio Super Distortion cream." I'm like, "Oh my God." So I got that news this week. I brought my guitar over to him, and he's working on it for me. He's going to set it up, put it in.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
We're all a bunch of guitar nerds, a bunch of geeks. Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. It's what keeps us going, keeps us together, keeps us happy, and when you're happy, people around you are happier with you. Chris, what have you got to show us?
What is beside me? What I found 2 weeks ago on my local listing here, like I suppose Facebook Marketplace is everywhere, right? So one came up and it was like PV Eddie Van Halen guitar, and and the listing, I thought the person was like a scam because it's like going, this is I can't even remember what it said. Solid wood guitar made for a right-handed player. All works, blah. Just it didn't make sense. And when I went around there, my girlfriend I live with was like, when I finally went to go, I said, "Oh, I'm keen on this. I'll take it. When's a good time?" And he goes, "Now." And I'm like, "Oh, babe, I'll be back in about 40 minutes." And she's like, "Babe, when you get there, I want you to text me because I don't want you to die before, because it's in a funny, sketchy area. Don't want you to die before you come back because you might not be coming back with your car because it might not be real." But anyway, because it was weird. So I get there, this guy, teenager, 17, met him, cool, and like brings the guitar out and goes, "Oh, I got the guitar here." I'm like, "Awesome, dude. Yeah, you play guitar?" And he goes, "No, I don't play guitar. I got this guitar from a family friend who now lives overseas. He left it with my family to do what we want. He used to play a lot and hasn't played for a long time. He gave it to me in case I want to play guitar." And it's a Wolfgang special.
Oh,
right.
Wow, I got the scoop headstock. Beautiful.
Oh, dude, it's a patent pending.
Oh man, that's
I'm so glad you guys are jonesing. Yeah.
That's
fantastic. I checked up the serial number, and from what I can tell, it's a first year special or second year special because they're funky on the serial numbers, right? So it's a pretty good nick. It's got one little dingo here. So I get it off the guy, all right? And he brings it. I got the original case. Doesn't has the spec sheet or the other stuff in there. And the guy puts the guitar down on his wall, and he's opening it upside down. He goes, "Oh, I'll show you the guitar," and I'm just being really polite. And it almost fell out, and I went, whoa. And I took it off, and he said, "Oh, I got it. And he goes, "Oh, okay, sorry." And I said, "Yeah, this is an Eddie Van Halen guitar." And he gave me a look, like, and I go, "You know Van Halen?" And he's like, I go, "Right, okay, cool." And I go, "That seriously?" And I'm like, That's okay.
Then you proceeded to say, "I'll give you $200 for it."
It was like it cost me in New Zealand dollars. It cost me 1,200.
that's a deal.
Oh, hey, so like in the original case, I was like, no key though. Yeah. So if any of you guys have a key for a PV case, anyone out there, I'll pay you money.
Okay.
Anyway, so I get it off him. I go, well, yeah, well, you know who Jimi Hendrix is? And he goes, oh, yeah, I know Jimi Hendrix. I go, okay, cool. And he was looking at me like he's saying something wrong. I'm like, it's okay. You don't. But Eddie Van Halen's kind of like an electric guitar. You go Jimi Hendrix, then you probably go Eddie Van Halen. He's like, oh, cool. So yeah, I got back in the car and I knew it that this guitar hadn't been played ages, and it's like he gave me a box and it had everything the old guitarists used to have, like a blow tuning peg thing. Remember those? Like
Yes.
yeah, and like fast fruit. You guys remember fast fruit?
Yes.
Dried out as it gets. They've never been used for like 20 years. And this guy used to play this, and I'm like, rad. And he must have gave up a long time ago. And it's one of those cliched, you know, you find a 59 Les Paul sitting underneath someone's bed. My uncle had it. Well, it's not a 59, but you know.
Right.
And it's a patent pending. I couldn't believe it. I was like,
that's a score. That is a total score. It's beautiful.
oh,
Yeah.
champion. I'll post it to you.
I'm glad you did some evangelization with the guy too. You know, you made the connection between Jimi Hendrix and EVH. That's really important work. God bless you, brother.
Well, you had to try. The funniest thing is I've got so many guitars now. I saw like one of the YouTube guitar guys was talking about how he doesn't pay for guitars anymore because he's got so many guitars that now he just flips through guitars. I don't know if you guys can do that kind of thing. I think I've got, don't tell my girlfriend that she's out. I think I've got 20 electrics in my house at the moment. And it's just, you know, bro, it's the stage where my girlfriend is amazing. I love her to bits. I've been with her for a long time. She's starting to tweak. She's like, yeah, just you've got too many, babe. Like she's telling me to sell one of my bins, my cabs. She keeps looking at my PV 5150 cab and going, you sell that cab. And I'm like, I'm not selling the cab. I'll sell a guitar. But so another one here. It's not the same as your diver down, but we all know these, right?
Oh,
The Beretta Specials.
Awesome.
Like, what are these? Like a 179 in America?
They're I think they're a little bit more. They're probably 279, 370.
Nah, they're like 379 in New Zealand. I think you guys are like maybe going up to 390. I think the blue's more expensive.
Yeah. I like the slanted hum on that. I always love the humbucker slanted. Love that.
Well, I had got this thinking, right, because I don't know if you probably have owned like single pickup guitars, right?
Yep.
There's a mojo in them where, you know, the magic where it's just like the one magnet pulling on the strings. They sustain. Like this is dare I say, a cheap guitar, but it just sings. I was going to change the pickup. I've got a really nice Jackson J80C, which is a ceramic Jackson pickup from the late 80s. If you know what they are. I don't know if you guys know of a guitarist called Joe Holmes. He played a Aussie in the 90s.
Yeah.
He swears by those, and I once again found one of those through my local place here for like a Jackson humbucker, and I'm like, oh shit, I've got it, and I was going to drop it in. But that sounds good. This is an example of a cheap guitar is only one setup away from a great guitar.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
well, that was the first guitar, wasn't it, Mikey, that guys could buy mass-produced to get anywhere close to anything that EVH had in the States. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it was the Kramer, I don't know if it was the Kramer Pacer was one of the first ones. And I think the Pacer is the very first one Kramer gave Ed, that purple with the two humbuckers, which he then proceeded to put the orange, white, and yellow tape on. So
Yeah.
the Pacer was the first one he got. And that's pretty much like the first thing that we got. That was the Ed.
It's the 5150, his guitar, the Kramer, it's a Pacer body, right?
I believe it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, these are amazing for the money, and that's why I said before when you picked up your diver down, is like I've got 20 guitars in there, right? I've got 6 Gibsons, which I never thought I'd own a Gibson, and they're all beautiful. And I got a Fender in there, Japanese Jackson, blah 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 blah. This neck, dude. If you guys have not played, both you guys, Andrew and Brad, have you twiddled on one of these?
Awesome.
Yeah. Our local rock shop's got a couple. They're nice guitars. Yeah.
Brad, please, if you go into a shop, the action might be funky, but go into a shop up here randomly one day and just, you know, Mikey, do you know what I mean? Like these necks, or Andrew,
They're fantastic. They're fantastic.
one of the nicest necks I've ever felt. I was saying to my girlfriend last night, it's kind of like, was thinking about it when I was playing it. It's almost like when you got a dessert or you got something that you just like, and you're eating it. It's so nice and creamy that you just keep eating it. It's like what that feels like. It's
Yeah.
These necks are really nice.
It's one of the great things about guitars, isn't it? Because you can spend a lot of money, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to get a really good guitar. See this guitar here? That's my classic vibe Squire 60s. That's just as good as any American Strat I've got.
Classic
And I mean
live with really good guitars.
And I mean that sincerely. I've changed the pickups and I've changed the block on it, but other than that, so, and that guitar that you've got and you diver down, if people want to get into the market and play some tunes, if they're inspired by Van Halen, you just go to the to the music store and buy those.
Yeah.
You don't have to spend a fortune.
No, you don't.
And I know, probably like you guys all know, like, do you remember buying any cheap guitars? Like I was born in the mid-70s, and so like when I got my first job in the very early 90s, like the first paycheck, I went into my local big brand guitar shop and put everything down on a guitar, apart from, I think I bought a bag of chips on the way home, true story. And the next week I was like, you guys have lay-by? Do that. And I went the next week and gave them the rest of the money. But those cheap guitars back then were like balsa wood or whatever, compared to, imagine... today.
Yeah, they were rubbish. The cheap guitars back in the day were rubbish. And this is one of the interesting things that we have to be careful of when you talk about stuff coming in from China. Yeah, there are grades and degrees of stuff from China, but some of the good Chinese stuff that's coming through, it's pretty good. And the good thing, though, with that guitar that you've got, Chris, and you've got, Mikey, is you're going to get pretty close, and with a good modeling amp, with a Yamaha THR amp, you're going to nail some Van Halen tones.
Absolutely.
Guaranteed.
100-watt tube amp.
Oh, well, yeah, or a Marshall. But you're going to, you're going to nail it. You're going to be in the ballpark, not like you would have been 15, 20 years ago.
Absolutely. The Kramer necks are fantastic. That neck on that 84 Beretta is just, it's like butter. It's so thin. And the back is almost like unfinished, so it's got a really good feel to it. Fantastic.
Right, these are a little bit slick, but it's really smooth. Yeah. But like they talk about, well, not here, but you talk about people bagging on like the Mexican fenders, it's made in Mexico. But apparently, most of the people that work in the Mexican factory are quite into guitars and really want to be there. And so they do their best job on them because they've got love for it. Right.
EVHs are made in Mexico, and I think some of the Wolfgangs are made in Indonesia, and they're fantastic.
Indonesian's the other one. I mean, there's no countries worse than the other country in the world, obviously, but yeah, I've got Indonesian Ibanez's, and it's just friggin' beautiful. Lovely fretwork.
Yeah.
I've got one of
the
the
good thing.
My EVHB is from Mexico. It's awesome.
I've got one of the what was it, the Mexican Jimi Hendrix signature guitars. And it's a beautiful guitar. It's absolutely beautiful. It feels great to play. Construction's good. There's a few mods I'm going to do to it moving forward, but they're selfish mods, just because I like to customize things a little bit. But other than that, beautiful guitar.
And even like that, say like someone just mentioned the Epiphone guitars, lots of the Epiphone stuff. Like my brother is a lawyer and he plays guitar as long as I have, and he's probably he doesn't say he's a good guitarist, but he's an amazing guitarist. He can play Led Zeppelin perfectly. He'll show me stuff, and I'm like, what chord is that? What? He's playing this amazing stuff. But he had I think it was he had like an Epiphone Special 2, and one good setup, fantastic. Are you guys hearing a funky noise, or is it just me?
Yeah. No, I'm hearing it too.
We're hearing some funk.
I don't think it's me.
Yeah.
It's like an echo.
Andrew,
it's Mikey.
And
I think my battery's
lying here.
cutting out.
Just because it's lying here.
I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we can hear you. Just barely hear you, brother.
Okay. Yeah, I think my battery's about to cut out. So if you guys lose me.
Oh no.
Oh, brother, thank you for joining us. Come back for another show. Come back for another show, brother.
Woo.
Thank you, guys.
Don't go. Don't go.
what we'll do, guys, is we'll hang out here for another 10, 15 minutes or so. We'll get some stories from Chris. But, yeah, Mikey's a really nice guy. He's been on our show a couple of times, Chris. He came on a Christmas special that we had. And also we did a 8-hour, 10-hour marathon when Eddie passed, on the anniversary of Eddie passing away. So check him out. If you're not friends with him on Instagram, I'll send you his link. And friend him, because he is sharing everything EVH, isn't he, Brad?
Yeah,
Every day.
He's amazing. You know, I wish I could be as active as him on socials. He's great at it. He does a great job. So yeah.
That's how I discovered you guys. It was through Instagram. I think it was Kurt's 5150, right?
Oh,
Something came up, like in my, because I do the whole, like I do on YouTube, I purposely look at only certain things in your feed so they start cross-pollinating in that. And he kept putting stuff up. And I had no idea who Kurt's 5150 was. I originally, should I say it out loud? Yeah. I originally saw it. I thought it was just some dude who liked Nirvana and Van Halen said Kurt's 5150. And I was going, okay. All these friggin' amazing guitars. And I don't know. I probably just said, I'll be your friend. And then somehow on YouTube it popped up to do with you guys. I'm going, right, it's a Van Halen show. I'm totally in. And then that guy's like, I'm from New Zealand.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah. Well, that's what it is, you know. It's a community. We all cross over, and it's quite amazing that the people we've met through doing this show, Chris, is amazing. You know, we've been quite blessed that you know, we get to sit here for a couple of hours every week or every fortnight doing the 5150 show. And we've met some amazing people, and we've got some amazing friends in the chat as well.
Yeah,
it's humbling, but we're all here for the same reason, because we're fans.
And I love the people in the chat, because I've been in there and it's so nice. It's really awesome, you know. The people come in.
Chris, forgive me if I
You're right.
should know this probably about you, but do you have a music man? Do you have a music man?
No, I had a Sterling Axis once, and I passed it on to get something else, because it wasn't. If it was a music man, I wouldn't have. And I'm a dude who, like, you know, reading all the old guitar worlds and everything, and guitar players from the late 80s, early 90s knew all about him doing Music Man when he did. So I've lusted after them forever, especially what's behind you, the gold ones. Yum, yum, yum.
I back in the day, I had a choice at the time to buy a Les Paul or a EVH Music Man, and I went the Les.
What year is this? What year?
This would have been back in the, trying to think, late 90s or early 2000, but it was a translucent, transamber EVH Music Man, and I opted for the Les Paul because of my style of guitar playing and the music I was playing.
Good choice.
Was more Les Paul orientated, but I kicked myself for never buying that guitar. And last year, this thing popped up on Marketplace and on Facebook, and it's the Axis version of the same guitar, basically, just a few different things. But and I wouldn't have this guitar if it wasn't for Andrew. He persuaded me and pushed me.
Go and grab it, bro. Go and grab it. Put it on the camera.
All right.
I don't know if you can hear me when you grab it, but Andrew did that to me about a month or two ago. You were selling like a Sterling, and he said, "Do you want this?" And I passed up on it, and I just tormented my girlfriend about a week, going, "Why don't I just get it? Why don't I get it?"
This particular guitar is like my era of Van Halen. I love it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
For me, it's my tribute to it, if that makes sense.
Oh, I'm right with you there. I've watched you guys a lot, and I know that you're a unlawful carnal knowledge guy, and I totally can't stop playing that record. Love it.
And, it's great because it's got the slight cutaway, which the EVH model didn't have.
Right.
Cut, so it makes it sit a little bit more comfortable in when you're playing. So, but the only thing I've done different to this, I reversed that pickup, which is
got to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I just did that, and I literally did that on Andrew's advice, to be honest with you, because I was just going to leave it, and I purchased it. It already had the D tuner on it, so it's just a beautiful guitar. And the necks on these things,
super fast.
it's got a slight flame and bird's eye. I don't know if you can see it. My camera's not great, but it's got.
Yeah, now you can. Yep.
It depends on which angle you have it. Some angles it's really strong.
Oh yeah, you can see it now. You can see it now.
It's a beautiful guitar.
Do you know what year it is?
The necks on these things are just sensational. Geez, I've forgotten, but I've got it documented.
All right, dude.
You can look up the serial numbers. The great thing about music, man, is you can look up the serial number and it gives you all the details on it. I think it was 2006, but I'd have to get back on that. Yeah.
Do you have a story? Sorry, you go.
It's just a sensational guitar. That's all. And I'm a massive Music Man fan for this reason. And Andrew supplied me with the eye hooks.
Got to do that. Got to do that, bro. Got to put the hook
to me
on.
Is this is the eye hook things that Andrew sent me.
Wow.
So
I hope you guys are okay that I'm starting to like subvert this whole thing into like a gear talk.
No, it's all right. It's we're still guitar heads here, so it's okay to deviate on guitars. But yeah, that's my music, man. It's just beautiful.
Right.
Everybody in the chat's a guitar nut too, because they're all talking about their guitars and complimenting everybody on the guitars that they've got, because that's what unites us. If it's not the music, it's certainly the guitars and sharing those experiences that we've picked up over the years, which is always a good thing, isn't it? Because I never get sick of it. When I find out someone's a guitar player, what do you got? What do you got?
I need to see it. I need to see it right now.
Yeah.
Like one in the chat. One in the chat. If I look at it, Keith a second ago mentioned his Wolf Standard. It is a really awesome neck, and I'd love to. Like that's the standard's the lower one, right? It's the special, then the standard, and that the way they go. Like
special and standard. Special, then standard. Yeah.
And then there's
and then there's the US. But Keith's been on our show, but we never got him to show any guitars. So when he comes back on for another show, he's going to have his guitars handy to show us.
Oh yeah, Keith, come, Keith, come. And Brad, you got like I'm going to pick stuff, like you got stories behind you, 2 Slash amps behind you.
Yes. It's funny because I bought that many different amplifiers, and I had a JCM Slash. I sold it. I've had a 5150. I sold it. 2 amps I wish I still had again, but I had a DSL, I think it was Marshall, and I wasn't quite happy with it. And just ironically, a JCM Slash popped up again, brand new in a guitar store years after they were manufactured and stopped, and they were deleted by that stage. They weren't releasing them anymore.
Super hard to find.
And it was in a box. It was never opened.
Ball hockey, really?
A store here in Melbourne, Australia, that had one sitting there. And I just basically was in the guitar store. I kicked the box. I said, "What's in that?" Like I tapped it with my foot. I said, "What's in that?" And he goes, "We haven't even opened that. We ordered it for a customer and they didn't come and get it. They obviously kept the deposit, And I said, do you mind if I have a look?" And they opened the box. The cover was in the plastic, everything like that. I just said, "I'm taking it." And I didn't even know what price it was. I just took it because I loved that guitar amp so much that I sold. And then not long after it, my then partner, my son's mother, we had a paper here called the Trading Post. This is long before Facebook. And another one popped up with a cabinet, this one here, with a road case for the head and a cabinet. That's the JCM Slash cabinet and the head. And it was like secondhand, but it was never used. The guy was selling it. He actually played for John Stevens, the guy I purchased that off. And he bought it for touring and then never used it. And he was obviously doing it tough for cash. So I went around there and I offered him a stupid price. And he was a bit insulted, so I bumped it up a bit, and he took it. So, so I've got this one here is my backup one, and oh, sorry, that head there is the one I bought from, and
Right.
Way is my main rig there. So that head there has been modified by an amazing amplifier technician called Was from Tone Revival Engineering, who we've had on the channel here, and we'll get him back on as well. But he brought the Marshall back into this, if that makes sense. I had it modded and I wasn't happy, and then he took it back to the Marshall tone. But it's that amplifier there, that head through the green box, that one, the greenback box is the best combination of amp I've ever owned.
Wow.
And that's got a nickname. It's called the Monster, because it's just a monstrous sound through any cabinet I put it in. I've got an Albrig twin speaker box, which is a manufacturer here in Australia. See if you can see. So that cabinet, 212 box, and I use that a lot live here in Australia because a lot of the venues don't like volume. So if I drive a Marshall head through that, it sounds great. It's fairly deep, so it's got a fair bit of depth to the cabinet, which gives a lot of resonance. And because I'm driving a 100-watt head into it, I don't have to play too loud, and it sounds big. So it's kind of, bigger venues like tonight. I'm going to be using the green box, the green cabinet, what I call the green box, this one, with that head tonight at my gig, because it's a venue where I can turn up and crank it a bit, which I'm looking forward to tonight's gig, because I actually get to dial up them and crank the Marshall a bit.
Nice. I'm like that. I've only got stacks, and I've got to, whenever I go to gigs, you're always wheeling in the door at sound checking, just waiting for somebody looking at you like, you're scared they're going to be like, turn around, son. What do you think you're doing? It's a 100-watt Marshall.
It's funny though, but I kind of like playing softer. I don't mind playing soft on stage these days, because I kind of like listening to the other musos as well. But the beautiful thing that has done to that Marshall that I'm pointing at there is at a low volume, it still sounds massive regardless of what it's plugged into. So it's funny how I can plug a guitar in, no pedals, and it just sounds amazing by itself. So
are you running most of your dirt from the heads just on their own?
Pretty much. I'm old school, mate. I roll the volume back.
Yeah.
I roll the volume back clean and dirty. That's how I don't use a clean, dirty pedal. I don't do that. So
dude, I don't know about you, but I've tried, at home, you get like pedals, you get all these bits and pieces, like, oh, my sound's so good. Oh yeah. And whenever you hit a hard hitting drummer, everything goes out the window, and it just has to be dirt from the amp. And I don't know how to do it. Like I was watching like an Andy Timmons gear thing, and he's got all these thousands of different dirt pedals to achieve saturation, but I can't shove it apart from like a tube screamer or a super overdrive, in the front of it. I don't know how people do it. Like I'd love to, bedroom tone at home, you go,
I think it's different. You put things in a live aspect.
Yeah.
On stage, things change completely. In a bedroom when you're playing with pedals and that, they always sound great, but in a live aspect, for me, they don't cut it. So I like to kind of keep it simple on stage as well. I'd rather have a good tone, a good sound, and just keep it really simple. And there's things you can do to your amp to so when you clean your volume up on your guitar, it actually cleans the sound up as well. Not just naturally cleaning it up, but it actually brings out more of the top end, and like a bleed, like a treble bleed, but not a treble bleed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different things. And in this head here, we've put a push-pull on one of them. We've called it like a squelch. It pushes the mid-range. And with a Les Paul plugged into it, I can pull that real slash tone, or even I can pull that really ed tone where the scooped mids are up a bit, and that's great.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've always loved that about Gibsons, like getting the neck pickup. And for me, I think it's 1.5, exactly 1.5 on the dial. And then if you flick to that one, you got a clean tone. You can lock down to the bridge for rock. But I remember a long time ago, that rule of stuff goes wrong, right? You've got to be able to plug your lead into your amp with nothing else and make it sound good, just in case. Because we've all been there, right? We've all been, stuff goes wrong. And there's a crowd watching you going, play me some stuff. You like,
I did
Yeah.
a corporate gig. I did a wedding gig, right? So you can't think of a worse scenario than this. I did a wedding gig, and you're playing the wedding song as they're coming in to do the,
oh
the
no,
bridal
Yeah.
waltz, and my guitar rig just went dead quiet, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me what was happening. And I just had it serviced, and I was like, "What the hell?" I was thinking maybe a tube's blown or whatever. So, testament to having a good guitar and a good guitar sound directly into a guitar amp. So I just unplugged from the pedals and plugged straight into the head, and it just that my sound was there. So I was playing. I didn't play with any pedals all night. No one mentioned anything to me. So obviously I had a problem with one of my patch cables or something between my pedals, and I couldn't work it out. And I had no time because I was the only guitarist in the band, and the song had guitar in it. So for about 20 seconds, I'm trying to piss around with pedals. I just went straight into the amp. There was my sound. I was fine. I got through the gig, and then I got home and changed some patch cables, and no problem. So, but what I'm saying is, in an instant like that, it's great to know you can plug straight into your guitar head or amp and have your tone. I think it's a pretty important part to it.
and what did you tell me that was the song of the wedding?
Mate, it was the worst timing possible. It was the worst time. They come out to start dancing, and then I had no guitar tone. So it was bass, drums, and a singer playing for like half a verse to a verse before I realised I had no guitar sound. And then I was like, oh, I'm pissing around pedals. I thought it was a lead. I just bypassed the pedals, plugged straight into the amp, and beautiful. There's my sound. So yeah.
Imagine if it didn't go at all and you had to grab the spare mic and be like, wow, wow, wow. Just sing the guitar part.
The worst part was I was thinking if I was relying on pedals to get like just gain and this and that, I would have been stuffed. So yeah.
What's really interesting though about some of the albums that we do, and we're inspired by those guys too, aren't we? So what Brad said, and I'm sure you've done it, Chris, and I do it too. I just play through my blues breaker, just with my Les Paul now. I don't have any overdrives. I just, if anything, I have a reverb pedal. But I think the ability to be able to do that. And, the rock professor mentioned it the other day too when we were doing it, being able to use the controls on your guitar. And it's something that I think, you need to do as a guitar player. Even if you're a bedroom player, get used to doing it because you don't need 20 pedals. And Brad's hit the nail on the head because when it fails, what are you going to do, especially if you're a professional musician?
Or even if you're not professional and you're sitting for $20 in a jug and you've got like 50 people in a room going, I want to play,
or even just at a jam, which is pretty much the stuff that we do. Just plug it into your amp and use your tone and your volume knobs. I'm always going to argue that. I'm always going to argue that has to be something that a guitar player should be striving to do.
I'm just a floor tuner. I just need a floor tuner,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
The stuff on the floor for me should always be more for color, not to get your sound.
Good point.
If you need to delays, rotor vibes, univibes, chorus, pitch shifting, this and that, wah pedals, great. And they're amazing and they're so fun to have. But the minute something goes wrong with that, you need to be able to just bypass it and go straight into your amp and still have your tone just without the color. That's all.
Yeah.
So it's yeah.
On a completely side note, you're talking about Marshall. So I'm to go do this. I was lucky enough several years ago to go through the Marshall factory in England, right? And if you guys, or anyone gets a chance to, like, it was the most humbling experience ever. Like me and my partner, girlfriend, we're over there, and she said, "Do you want to go through the Marshall factory?" I called them up. It was my birthday. I didn't tell them it was my birthday. I turned up there. It was one of the main, if you ever watch, there's a couple of YouTube stuff of them going through a factory tour. One of the main managers of Marshall, who'd been manager for like 30 years, met me at reception, and my girlfriend took us through the whole place, and every single person there was the nicest person you could meet. They would stop what they do, how you going. It was so old world style. Like people think of Marshall being, like kind of a big brand, but they were so, everyone would stop. They're doing something like, someone would be like doing, "Oh, how you going, mate? Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you." Nice, and they were so nice the whole way through the place. Like even to my girlfriend, she's like, "Oh, I don't play guitar." It was humbling how nice they were.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And it was free.
Wow.
You know,
Better.
yeah. Doesn't if you're ever over there, it didn't cost anything. And they were like, every room, like here's the sound room where we do it. Here's blah blah blah. He's testing out his amp. Oh, g'day, mate. You know, and everyone would stop what they did, and it was really. And yeah, I think you guys probably would know this, but I didn't. That like Marshall's everywhere, right? But apparently Marshall's like made to order. Did you guys know that?
No.
Yeah, neither. Like me and my girlfriend are both like, what? They go, so like say these Marshall cabs everywhere, right? So
Yeah.
if I don't know, Canada, some shop in Canada, like big one goes, we need 50 cabs of the, you know,
Correct.
96, then they make them.
Yeah. So they do that. Yeah. They do that for the web group here in New Zealand too. You're right. So for example, they'll put the order and they'll say we want 50 of this model. So they make it for, and they pay cash up front. So that's one of the reasons why they still manage to make money too, because they're making equipment to order, which is good. It's a good business model.
They had the Yngwie Malmsteen amps on getting done, and they weren't even out yet. And they go, "Oh, just don't tell anyone. We haven't told anyone we're making them yet." And I'm just some guy from New Zealand, and they're like, "Oh yeah, okay." Like, nice and trusting, you know. And I don't want to be talking what I don't fully know, but from what I remember them saying was that they took care of people's families too. Like if you worked there and your wife got sick, they helped make sure her medical was okay, and then that you were okay and they were okay. You know.
Wow.
It was just like, it was just really hard, you know, like, whoa, yeah. Like, because I was in a band, I don't know, one of my bands maybe like 10, 15 years ago. My other guitarist was great guitarist, great player, great gear. He had a Mesa Boogie. I think he had a Mark C plus, you know, and he was like, beautiful amp. I don't know how he got it. And it sounded great, but he was like, "Oh, I'd never play a Marshall. You know, it's like playing a Ford or a Holden or something. It's just a cliche generic brand." Well, no. It was just his opinion. He's not you know, it was all right. He's not a bad guy, but that was just his opinion. Like he didn't want to play Marshall because of that reason. And I'm thinking, bloody hell, Viv, it's a Marshall. You know, you know.
Oh, it's good to have that the luxury of that opinion, though. I suppose, because at the end of the day, a Marshall is, pretty highly sought after. You know,
I'm taking it right back to Van Halen because we've gone to Van Halen
pretty
show.
good.
We all love Blue Cheer and Cream and Sabbath and everything else, right?
100%.
You would have seen. Have you guys seen the Mike Soldano interviews he's done on YouTube?
Yes.
Talking about, and Harry said he took apart Ed's famous Plexi and it was stock.
Yes.
Like, you know, but it was, what's the truth, wasn't it? But didn't one of the, I forgot the name, I should know him, you know, we all know him. He said that they went through it and in the Amps in the Zone videos, and he said that the mid pot was changed to a 500K from a 250K. And apparently that came out of the factory like that, like stock. Have you guys heard that? Have you guys heard that?
No.
I think I've never seen that or something on that YouTube thing.
Yeah. I'm going to kick myself, and everyone knows his name. Pete Thorne. Pete Thorne's Amps in the Zone.
One, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, apparently that was the only difference, and they were able to like stick it through the computers and look at the graph, and it just kind of went up in the mids just that little bit more.
Okay,
Just before I get, it's because I was watching it yesterday because we all love guitar geek stuff. So Mike Soldano said that when he went through that amp, which was 1990, is that right? When Ed got his couple Soldanos off him, he said that he went through Ed's amp, and of course the cliche was Dave saying, "Lie to the press, don't tell them what you're playing through." And so he told everyone to turn your Variac up, and it blew up.
Sure.
You know, and Ed said later on, "I feel so guilty that I made people blow up their amps." So like Mike Soldano said that he turned the Variac down, and when he got to that 88, he said, and I didn't notice it yesterday, he said it was probably only cranking out at about the 25-30 watt capacity.
Wow.
Whether that's right or not, I could be wrong. I mean, I know. But, you know, he said that, like, when he tested it, when he got down to 88, I don't know if anyone in the chat group knows about this and can help chime in. Yet he said when it was down to the 88 on the Variac, it was like, say, a 30-watt amp.
I need to go and check that out again.
Yeah.
So only a 30 watt. Wow.
Yeah, that's what Mike Soldano said. And shoes, Soldano, hello. Anyway, for me, you know, Soldano, hey. So, like, if that's true, so his brown sound is like a 30-watt cranked.
Wow.
So it just goes to show how important miking his amps and the PA systems were for that band then, if it was only just cranking at 30 watts.
Yeah, 100%.
And so back to our show here. So what was he using in this 86 period? Was he still on that Plexi?
No.
Pretty sure he's
No,
using
no.
that, wasn't he?
Oh.
Because it faded, didn't it? He said like something was going like it was dipping in sound and going a bit funky, and that's why he started searching out other amps like the Soldanos and that. But that wasn't until just before Carnal Knowledge, right?
Once he changed over to Soldano, I'm not sure about this era, 86.
No, I think Chris is right. Yeah, I think Chris is right. He was still using his Marshalls. Yes, in 80. Yeah, because 89 OU812, he's still using his Marshall. So he's not using PVs until then it was Soldanos, then PV. Yeah, so no, Marshalls. He's still using his Marshall.
Yeah.
All right. Nice. But yeah,
Holy
so
cow.
What was that? It's on. I'll link it here, which I'm not going to. Sorry, but I was watching it yesterday. That Soldano with what was that channel? You guys, it's called it under dropping other people's channels in, right?
No, it's fine. No,
okay, cool.
no, it's good.
Is it Riffs and Beards?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Riffs and Beards. I think he's got like an archived chat he does with Mike Soldano. And he talks about that. You might have seen it, and I hope you have because it's glorious. It's the one where apparently on Valentine's Day, Mike Soldano gets a phone call on Valentine's Day from Ed at 5 o'clock or 4:30 on a Friday afternoon saying, "I want to come and try your amp." And apparently he was there in half an hour. You guys heard that story?
No.
Yes.
Oh no, I have. Yeah.
Tell the story. Keith is agreeing with us. He was using his Marshalls right up into OU812. So yeah.
Thanks, Keith. Yeah, I was wondering if Keith was going to jump in and be like, "Here's some knowledge," So apparently, what the story goes, when Mike Soldano was in Melrose Place in Hollywood, and Ed's got a 5150 studio, and he was Valentine's Day, had a phone call everyone, we all read that Ed was just a heart of gold and a great, awesome guy. Apparently he gets a phone call on like a Friday or a Thursday afternoon on Valentine's Day at like 4 going, "Oh, hi, my name's Eddie Van Halen. Can I come down and check your amps?" And he's like, "Of course I know who you are." "Okay, sure. But you won't be here in time." And he goes, "Do you want to come down tomorrow?" And he goes, No, I can be there. I'll be there in half an hour. And Mike Soldano says, "I don't know how he got here in that much time from where his house is and where whatever that canyon's called where 5150 is, But he got there, apparently tested out the one that Mike has in the store. Mike had just an SLO 100 that was just the one he used in the store. And he took that one home. And so next morning, apparently at 10 in the morning, he called Mike up and said, "Oh, I love it. I want it. How much you want for it?" And he goes, "Oh, I'll make you one." He goes, No, I need this one. I need to have this one. And he got 3 more made. But Mike Soldano keeps talking about how he doesn't know how Ed got there in half an hour. He said that when he turned up, he had his truck. He was in his truck, and he had this truck fly into the car park. And
We'll link that. What we'll do, if you guys are watching the replay, because it's really important, we'll link that video that Chris is mentioning.
I can link it to you. I can link it to you, and then
yeah.
Well, is now better than later?
No, we'll do it later when we do the editing. It'll be good. But Brad, do you need to get ready for your gig?
Yeah, I was just about to say, gentlemen, I need to wrap it up myself because I've got sound check at 6, so I've got about an hour's drive ahead of me, so I've got to get moving. But wonderful to share this time with you guys.
Awesome. Chris is going to come back and hang out with us on some more 5150 shows. Got to get 2 Aussies and 2 Kiwis together. So, I
want to apologise to the rest of the world. There must be so many people like America and all these places that are going, what are they do? Friggin' now there's another Kiwi there. I hate these people's accent. This is awful. Sorry about the accent, guys.
No, we're just showing our love for great music and sharing our experiences. But Chris, thank you, brother, for jumping on and hanging out with us. We'll get you back. And Mikey too, he's been on a couple of shows, so he's always going to come back. If anybody in the chat wants to ever participate on a live stream with us, give me a message, flick me a message, flick Brad a message. We'll get you guys on. You can just come out, hang out with us. It can be 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or it could be for 2 hours. And hang out with us. We've got some great shows geared up. In a fortnight's time, we're going to be talking about the gear that Hoss is going to use for the corner bar gig. Tomorrow, we've got the Rock Professor, and we're going to be doing ranking the tracks on The Song Remains the Same. So join us for that on the Zoso show.
Yeah.
And this
One of the best
morning,
albums ever.
absolutely. And this morning, the Rock Professor and I did an interview with two guys who are going to be, who are authors on a book that's coming out for Peter Green. So if you guys haven't checked that show out, please do. We love Peter Green. We love Fleetwood Mac. And some interesting stories there. Yeah. I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to ask Brad and Chris to give their last words, and we're going to wish everybody well.
I loved your Jimmy Page show from the other day.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And I love your guys' opinion on The Song Remains the Same album, because that album is friggin' awesome. That was one of my like three when you're living in flats with all your other goonhead mates that was one of the you'd watch it all the time. You either have friends over and you'd be like partying, everyone would pass out, or get annoyed because you'd end up all the musos end up putting that on and just going,
absolutely,
check that bit out.
Yes.
Yeah. Forever great.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that. We'll be talking about that tomorrow, because I think it's a rite of passage, and it's something that we've probably watched in all states of minds too. But it's nothing like watching it with clarity and a bit of years under you to go, this is a great film.
The legendary bits, like for example, the amount of times, probably way beyond what you should be drunk, you and your mates getting up when the Bonham bit leaves him drag racing off in the car, and it comes back to him doing the crossover on the drums and the drum solo, and everyone's just standing up in the room going, oh my God, look at that. Oh my God. That's the greatest thing ever. It's funny how they say, it's true, really, well, not true, but like Jimmy always goes on, it wasn't our best live performance. It might not have been, but I love those versions. Like, like you were saying, Brad, the other day about like some of those versions are my favorite versions now, because I'm just so used to them like that.
I know, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
God.
I've got a theory about why Jimmy Page said that, and I'm going to share it with you guys tomorrow on the Zoso show. I've got a theory.
Save for tomorrow.
Yeah. All right, guys.
All right, Jess.
Thanks for hanging out. We're going to catch you guys tomorrow on the Zoso show. Come back, Chris.
I'd love to. I freaking love you guys. I'm super stoked to be here. I'm like, I don't want to leave the room.
You'll be back. Come back on some more 5150 shows and hang out with us. You're more than welcome.
100%.
Thank you so much. Such an honor.
Okay. We're out of here.
Have a good gig. Have a good gig.
Thanks, man. Thank you, brother. See you guys.